Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing and Heating and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Today, again, Predators tonight, 8 o'clock, taking on the Vancouver Canucks. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. David Janes in for Ian today. Hello, David.
What's up, buddy?
So I got to give a shout out before we get going on today's program. I got to give a shout out to Derrick Mason. So congratulations to D. Mace on the midday show for being named to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. And let me just say this. Again, I was a Titan fan. I went to the first game when they played Cincinnati and they won by 1 point on an Al Del Greco field goal in September of ~99. I went to the second game with my dad when they smoked an expansion Cleveland team. And by week 3, when they beat Jacksonville, I was hooked. I was hooked at 10 years old and have been a huge Titan fan ever since. In fact, I mean, I was talking, and I'll just put it out there. I told Chad Brinker last week, I was like, again, let me tell you something. I love my team. And of all the players that have come through here, Derrick Mason is one of the very best. And the Derrick Mason story, I don't think gets enough attention. Derrick Mason was a 4th-round pick out of Michigan State, who was labeled as a returner, and they put him at 5th and 6th at the receiver depth chart. And because of an injury to Kevin Dyson, an injury to Yancey Thigpen, a complete and total free agent whiff on Carl Pickens, Derrick Mason in 2000 set an NFL record for all-purpose yards in a season and was an All-Pro on the best Titan team. Derrick was also a big part of that 2002 team, in which I think is the second best Titans team of all time. And, I mean, his kick return, his free kick return in the AFC Championship game kind of really pushed the Titans ahead of Jacksonville in the second half, which led to Super Bowl 34. And if Derrick, and again, no disrespect to his coaches, Les Steckel, Jeff Fisher, etc., but I almost feel like if Derrick had come out of his shell a year earlier, which is not Derrick's fault. In my opinion, it was the coach's fault for not playing him more. But if Derrick had popped a year earlier, I think there's a pretty good chance the Titans run away with that Super Bowl, because that was the exact kind of player that they needed, and they had him on their roster. So I just want to give a shout out to start the show to Derrick Mason for being named to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. Derrick Mason was an excellent kick returner, punt returner, and wide receiver. And the Titans' decision to move on from Derrick, which was financially motivated, not skill-related, bit them in the ass when he came back here and scored a touchdown in that playoff game in 2008. And I've known Derrick now for a decade, and I consider him a good friend. And I think, you know, again, we've known each other now, 10 years, which is crazy. It's basically a third of my life. But I was a huge fan before I got to know him. And I'm just so happy for him and his family and his kids and everything else. So congratulations on being named to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame, D. Mace. Now, I want to get to this. Holy crap. I do not think that most of society lives on Twitter. I hope most of society does not live on Twitter. And I think most of Titan fans are rational, reasonable people who, you know, hear things on the radio and say, okay, yeah, that could make some sense. And that the people on Twitter that go nuts are not a representation of this fan base. But my goodness, the amount of people who lost their minds yesterday at the end of the program when I said that if I ran the Titans, I would be prepared to trade the 35th pick overall for Sam Darnold. And the amount of people, and maybe not the amount of people that disagreed with it. I understand disagreeing, but the idea that that is so outrageous to trade the 35th pick for Sam Darnold was kind of shocking. Hearing things like, Amy should burn the organization down if they do that. If they trade the 35th pick for Sam Darnold, they should just fire everybody. I'm like, okay, hold on. Let's take a step back here. And I don't know how many people were all worked up and all bent out of shape because it was coming from me, which I have noticed sometimes the messenger is as much the problem as the message. But the amount of people that think it is just crazy, it is just insane to trade the 35th pick in the draft for a starting quarterback kind of baffles me. Like, are you hearing yourselves? A starting quarterback. Not a Mayo pitch, man. Not a backup quarterback. Not some scar beanie that's got talent. A starting NFL quarterback for the 35th pick. A starting NFL quarterback who is 28 years old and got named to the original Pro Bowl roster. I'm not going to talk about, who ends up being a Pro Bowler, because I saw Drake May has now been invited to the Pro Bowl. But I'm talking about the original AFC, NFC rosters Sam Darnold was on. So all these people on Twitter yesterday were just losing their minds at the idea of trading the 35th pick for Sam Darnold. And I'm just sitting here saying, wait a minute. You think it's a bad value to trade the 35th pick for a starting NFL quarterback? And I have to believe that the same people that think it is crazy to trade the 35th pick for a starting NFL quarterback are the same people who think it's great value to use the 38th pick on a run-stuffing defensive tackle who got 1 sack last year and doesn't play on third down. So that's a good investment. A run-stuffing DT with the 38th pick who does not play on third downs, does not sack the quarterback, is not on the field in the 2-minute drill, is a good investment. But a similar pick on a starting quarterback, again, not one of these guys who might be a starting quarterback. You use the 33rd pick on Will Levis, who might be a starting quarterback. This guy is a Pro Bowl starting quarterback, a legitimate Pro Bowl starting quarterback. And you think that's a bad thing? And there's one thing that I know a lot of people are probably thinking, because this is how we view the difference between free agency and the draft. And I understand when it comes to the draft, it's the only way to get young, cheap, and uninjured players. When it comes to why a guy is available, the old man, Floyd Reese, used to always say there's one of 4 reasons that somebody is available. 1, bad player. 2, bad guy. 3, too much money. 4, injured. In the case of Sam Darnold, I think it's a little combination of not the best player, plus he's going to want a lot of money, plus they have a first-round pick invested in J.J. McCarthy. They have a top 10 pick invested in J.J. So, again, I understand the context here. You're probably thinking, no, the 35th pick, that's a young player that we can draft, that we can build, that we can mold. That's a 4-year investment when you use a second-round pick on a player. Because every contract outside of the first round is a 4-year contract. Well, again, it's not like I'm trading for Sam Darnold for him to be the quarterback for 1 year. I'm trading for Sam Darnold. I'm giving him a 4-year contract. It's really more like a 3-year contract with a Jared Stillman 4th-year team option. That's not a bad investment to walk out of the draft. This team has no answer at starting quarterback. We do not know if the quarterbacks in this draft are legitimate day one NFL starters. We don't know. At least I don't know. Maybe you know, but I have no idea. And you think it's crazy to use the 35th pick on, again, an original Pro Bowl roster player. 35th pick at quarterback for the next 3 years. Bad. Amy should burn the franchise down if they do that. First of all, Amy has to be in on the loop if they're going to do something like that. But bad. The 35th pick for a 28-year-old starting NFL quarterback on a team that does not have a starting NFL quarterback. Bad. The 38th pick on a run-stuffing DT who does not play on third down and does not play in the 2-minute drill and does not sack the quarterback. Good. I have to ask the question. Do some of you guys hear yourselves talk? The same people that are, oh, what do you think about Devondre Sweat now, Jared? Yeah. What do you want me to say to that? Let Rand cook? You think that that's a good pick. But trading basically the same pick for your starting quarterback would be a bad pick. I don't understand. You know what's funny is I criticize pretty much every move the Carthon administration made up and down. And I had to deal with all kinds of people telling me that I'd be sorry one day and I'd be apologizing one day and Rand was going to show me and I got called racist and everything. But you know the move I never criticized and I still don't criticize to this day? I don't criticize trading up in the second round of the 23 draft and taking Will Levis. And that is with Will Levis having been a bust. I don't criticize that move because Will Levis had talent that was indicative of that spot in the draft. And that's a quarterback. You got to take a swing. It's going to be expensive at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill was never the player Derrick Henry was. Ryan Tannehill made $30 million a year. Derrick made 12. That's the league. You want to get a real quarterback, it's going to cost. And so, again, I was stunned yesterday. Again, this Sam Darnold thing for me, it's not new. This would be my number one option would be to, look, my number one option would be to sign Sam Darnold in free agency. But I don't think he's going to survive the tag. So he's going to get tagged, in my opinion, and so you have to trade. And again, I'm not a believer in Ward yet. I'm not a believer in Sanders yet. So my thing would be, hey, let's use that first pick on a good player. And then let's use the second pick to go get the quarterback and be done. And yet, boy, oh my God, people were freaking out. 615-737-1025. That's where we're starting today. 615-737-1025. So if you were to trade the 35th pick for Sam Darnold, which again, some of you think is just total blasphemy, which run-stuffing DT do you want to draft this year? I kid. But what player is worth not acquiring a starting quarterback? We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. Stillman Co. 1025, 106 for the game.
good guys that'll be solid starters for a long time. Above that, you better have generational game breakers. You better be taking those kinds of guys. And so, is one generational game breaker worth a couple of good solid starters? And I tend to think that the way the game is played nowadays, they'd be better off taking Carter than trading down. Now, if they did trade down, I'd be okay with it as long as they picked the right guys. But Carter, I think, adds a level of oomph to the team, the level of ability to beat the other guy one-on-one, regardless of what the scheme is, that I think will be a real delight to watch.
That was Trevor Matich on our show yesterday. And so I said, okay, because everyone's talking about pick. Everybody's talking about, trade down or the quarterbacks or whatever. And I said, all right, if you end up trading the 35th pick for Sam Darnold and you use the first pick on Abdul Carter, and that is the end result, no third-round pick because you traded that for L'Jarius Sneed, stupidly, and no trade down, so no extra picks. Is that good enough? And I already know the fan base right now. I can hear in my head, oh, no, oh, God, what about all the picks we need? But Trevor says it's good enough. So let's operate under my assumption for a second that Sam Darnold gets franchised, and thus you have to trade to acquire him. Because every time we bring up Sam Darnold and we talk about a trade, people on Twitter, the text line are like, isn't Sam Darnold a free agent? Sam Darnold is a free agent, but let's operate under the premise that he's going to get tagged, a la L'Jarius Sneed last year. If Minnesota were to ride with Darnold in 2025 and then let him leave as a free agent, they would get a third-round comp pick in 2027. After signing a contract for 2026, which is why, in my opinion, a 2025 second-round pick, especially at the top of the first round, is very good value. In fact, probably too good a value to pass up if your future is committed to J.J. McCarthy. So let's just operate under this assumption. Because, again, I think he's going to get franchised. If he doesn't get franchised, it'll be great because then you can get Darnold and you can use the 35th pick. But I'm trying to live on planet Earth and not planet, we got to go sign T. Higgins last year. T. Higgins is going to get tagged. And he did. So let's operate under this premise. Who are you going to use that 35th pick on? I hear people tell me that, no, we don't want Darnold. No, we want to use the 35th pick. So I have the Pro Football Focus big board in front of me. And granted, are all these players going to be good? I don't know. Are all these players going to get drafted within that 35 range? I don't know. Some of these guys might really be the fourth best player in the class, and some of these guys might be day 3 picks. I don't know. But these are their rankings from pick 30 to pick 40. Here's what they have. Their big board. So, again, I think 35 falls right in the middle of that. 30th, Demetrius Knight Jr., a linebacker out of South Carolina. 31, Trey Amos, a corner out of Ole Miss. 32, Siobhan Revelle, a corner out of East Carolina. 33, Donovan Izaraku, an edge rusher out of Boston College. 34, Elick Ayamanor, a wide receiver out of Stanford. 35, TJ Sanders, a defensive lineman out of South Carolina. 36, Walter Nolan, a defensive lineman out of Ole Miss. 37, Wyatt Millam, a tackle out of West Virginia. 38, Landon Jackson, an edge rusher out of Arkansas. 39, Princely Umanamelian, an edge rusher out of Ole Miss. And 40, Jahad Campbell, a linebacker out of Alabama. So, again, I don't know these guys from a jar of Vicks, but are you telling me that Elick Ayamanor is going to be more valuable to your football team than a starting quarterback that just threw for 4,300 yards? And if you don't make the trade for Darnold, if you don't get Sam Darnold as your quarterback, and you don't use the pick on Ward or Sanders, which, again, I'm not convinced Ward or Sanders is worth the number one pick ahead of Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, who's your starting quarterback going to be? All I ever hear from Mike Borgonzi is, we got to solidify the quarterback position over and over and over again. Now, again, what solidify means to you and what it means to him might be two different things. What it means to you might be Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, that kind of quarterback. But when he talks about solidifying the quarterback, he references Alex Smith, who, again, had incredibly similar stats to Sam Darnold for the first 7 years of his career. So if you take Landon Jackson, if you want Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, who's the quarterback? So congratulations. You got Wyatt Millum to play tackle, but you have no quarterback. That is nonsensical to me. And right now, Sam Darnold is better today than Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward, and is almost certainly going to end up as a better player long-term than Shadur Sanders. And I would argue probably ends up better than Cam Ward. So how, again, can we be okay with using the 33rd pick and a third-round draft choice on Will Levis, but not okay with using the 35th pick on a guy who just threw for 4,300 yards? For a guy who, again, is a Pro Bowl quarterback, and not he got invited to the Pro Bowl because 9 other guys dropped out, but was one of the top 3 passers in the NFC this season. Somebody in the YouTube chat just said, aren't you the right tackle guy? Maybe Wyatt Millum, the tackle, that's your right tackle. Yes, I am the right tackle guy. But there is not a single position on the football field that is more important than quarterback. And right now there's one guy out there. And you guys are like, nah, we need Landon Jackson instead. We need TJ Sanders instead. We need Walter Nolan instead. We need more Tavondre Sweats. Somebody said, Tavondre Sweat was all rookie team, Jared. Yeah. And Sam Darnold made the Pro Bowl. Again, on the first ballot, not this Fakakta got invited. Sam Darnold this year was an elite player in the NFL. Tavondre Sweat was not. Get your value system in this draft calibrated properly. You don't need a punter with the 35th pick. You do need a quarterback. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, if you are a believer in Justin Fields, which some of you are, I am not, but if you are a believer in Justin Fields, there may be some good news for you. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman Co, 1025 The Game.
Let's move to the Pittsburgh Steelers, once again facing a choice at quarterback. Team owner and president Art Rooney said yesterday that his preference is to sign either Justin Fields or Russ, but probably not both. Tone, if you had to pick, who?
Yeah, I would take Justin Fields. Russell Wilson is 36 years old. I think we saw the best of what Russell Wilson has left in the first 7 games he started this year for the Steelers. He was 6-1 in those games. He had 12 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions, and the team averaged 28 points. And then the roof fell in, okay? And in the next 5 games, they lost 5 games consecutively, including a playoff game. They only averaged 14 points a game. Russell Wilson's statistics were okay, but I think that people thought he would be expendable there. The reason I would take Fields is because Fields is a really good runner. Now, he's an okay passer. He's not any better than that, but he had career marks this year in the games he started for Pittsburgh. He had his best passer rating. He had his best completion was best. And in Chicago, he started, I believe, 38 games and had 41 turnovers. And this year started 6 and only had 2 turnovers. So I think.
There you go. That was PTI talking about, hey, what do you think about the quarterbacks? What do you think about Pittsburgh with Justin Fields? And again, there's a lot of talk. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Texter says, I'd rather sign Justin Fields than trade for Sam Darnold. Better value. Remember, this is a 2-year bridge quarterback until we've rebuilt the roster. Well, here's the good news. When the Pittsburgh Steelers say, hey, we're going to pick one or the other, Fields or Wilson, haven't they kind of already told you who they like more? They had them both on the team last year. Russell got hurt. Fields started, won games. Russell came back, and they immediately stuck Fields on the bench. Then, as the season fell apart at the end of the year, the Steelers did not go to Fields. They didn't change a coach. They didn't change a GM. They didn't change a coordinator. So it's all the same. So last year they told you Russell over Fields. Right now they're saying Russell or Fields. Why would they pick Fields? If all last year all they did was pick Russell, why would they now all of a sudden pick Fields? So if you're a Fields person, the good news is he probably gets out there to free agency. But here's what I don't care about when it comes to the quarterback that I do care about at other positions, like right guard. Value. I do not care about winning a deal at quarterback. If it costs me 18 number 1 picks to get Mahomes, I do it. Trey Smith is a guard. He went to UT. So, of course, a big portion of this fan base is, go get Trey Smith. Trey Smith's going to cost $20 million a year. I'm not paying a right guard $20 million. I'll pay Dylan Radin 7 or 5 before I'll pay Trey Smith 20 for a guard. But again, you guys don't care about value. You like guards with the 11th pick and run stuffing DTs in the 2nd round. Quarterback is the one place where value does not matter. Tell me a team that is winning right now simply because they got their quarterback on a deal. Does Philadelphia have their quarterback on a deal? They're paying him $50 million. Kansas City spent 2 first-rounders and a 3rd to get their quarterback. Buffalo spent a first-rounder, their left tackle, and 2 seconds to go get their quarterback. I don't care about the value at the quarterback spot. I bought into that crap when they signed Ryan Tannehill to a $29.5 million contract, and the going rate for Mahomes and Watson and these guys was $40 million at the time. And I was like, see, this will matter because while the other teams are paying their guys $40 million, we're paying our guy $29.5. It never mattered. So I don't care about the value between Justin Fields and Sam Darnold. I do not care about that. Let's go to Thomas. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com at 615-737-1025. Thomas, go ahead.
Hey, Jared, how can we get the Cincinnati Bengals backup quarterback?
You can trade for him. I mean, the problem is that he's not good.
I think he's one of the better backups in the league, is what I think.
Okay, well, if that was the case, then why didn't he not win any games?
I think when our coach had him last year, they won a few, didn't they, when Burrow was out?
I will just say this, and I appreciate your call. When it comes to Jake Browning and it comes to the decision to, play, let's go find this guy. First of all, you have to trade when it comes to Jake Browning. You have to trade for him. He's the same age as Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold just threw for 4,300 yards. Jake Browning has 1,900 in his career. As a starting quarterback, Jake Browning was 4-3 in Cincinnati with the best receivers. I mean, you see what I'm trying to say here? Like, you guys are – I'm taking a guy that made the Pro Bowl this year. Like, again, made the Pro Bowl not in the way everybody makes the Pro Bowl, but actually made the Pro Bowl. A top 3 passer in the NFC. Granted, a top 3 passer in the NFC is not a top 3 passer in the AFC. But a top 3 passer in the NFC. I'm acquiring him to be the starting quarterback. And you're like, well, what about Cincinnati's backup? Again, stop worrying about the value of the quarterback spot. Stop worrying about it. Again, when it comes to Ward or Sanders, I don't care about using the number 1 overall pick on these guys if they're franchise quarterbacks. But I don't think they're franchise quarterbacks, so I'm not using the number 1 pick on them. If I thought they were franchise quarterbacks, but still thought Abdul Carter was a better player, like Lawrence Taylor. Let's say Abdul Carter was the next Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor's greatest defensive player in the history of the NFL. And let's say that Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback. Cam Ward is Jaden Daniels. I don't think Jaden Daniels will go down as the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL the way LT is the greatest defensive player ever. I would be okay with taking somebody who profiles as Jaden Daniels over somebody who profiles as Lawrence Taylor. Because, again, we're talking franchise quarterback. But I don't think Ward and Sanders are franchise quarterbacks. One texter into the text line says, I am tuning you out. This is one of your worst hills to die on. No one tunes into your show to hear flapped lips about Sam Darnold. Woof. That comes from C and Franklin. Again, I think you tune into the show to hear us talk about the Titans. And the one thing I feel like I'm consistent of is how are we, me and you, how are we going to build the Titans? Again, Sports Talk Radio, first guessing, second guessing, coaches. How are you going to rebuild the Titans? Go get Mahomes. Okay, how do I do that? You can't. So there has to be a second option as far as I'm concerned. One texter says, before Sam Darnold played with Minnesota, he was cheeks. Look at his entire book of work, and you will see who he is. It just goes to show you that even a mediocre quarterback can be good in the right system. Sam Darnold will not have the same success in Tennessee that he had in Minnesota because our system is different. Fun fact, texter, your system is the same. You run the same system as Minnesota. You may not understand that because they run it well, and you had Will Levis, but it is the same system. Sean McVay, head coach of the Rams. Zach Taylor, quarterback coach of the Rams. Zach Taylor goes to Cincinnati. Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator under Zach Taylor. That is the McVay tree. When Zach Taylor left to go to Cincinnati, guess who replaced him as quarterback coach of the Rams? Kevin, coach of the Rams. Same system. They have better players, but it is the same system. When you tell me, oh, no, it's just the Minnesota system. No. It is not the Minnesota system. It is the same system. So when you tell me that, now look, you may say that Callahan stinks compared to Kevin O'Connell. That's a different discussion. I've said that if we're looking at the board and we see Sam Darnold and we say, okay, that's a talented quarterback who's a top 3 passer in the NFC, just threw for 4,300 yards, blah, 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 all those things. And you say, we're sitting around, we're the Titans. We're Borgonzi and Brinker and Scarbini and everybody else. And we're sitting around and we say, okay, we're going to make this deal. Well, we can't because Brian Callahan's our coach and Brian Callahan's not very good. If that is the case, and again, the word I used there, the key word was if if that's the case, you fire the coach. And then you go get a coach that can coach players up to their potential. And if you can't coach Darnold up to his potential, then why would you think the same guy could coach Justin Fields to his potential? Why would you think the same guy could coach Cam Ward up to his potential? So give me a break. Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders joins us next on the program. His reaction, 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063, The Game. Nationals' best deal this week is Single Tree Barbecue in Murfreesboro. Single Tree Barbecue is a locally veteran-owned and operated business, only serving world-class barbecue with a perfect combination of sides and desserts. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at thegamenational.com/deals. Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, as he always does. Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
And
sure.
I know you probably haven't done a lot of the studying yet or anything
Yes,
of
I
that
have.
magnitude, but okay, all right, then that's good.
Absolutely.
What would you rather have?
Mhm.
Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter at wide receiver or pass rusher with the number 1 pick,
Okay.
and the second round pick goes to Minnesota in exchange for Sam Darnold, or
Okay.
drafting one of these two quarterbacks with the number 1 pick, no Hunter, no Carter,
gosh, dang
but
it.
you still have the 35th pick.
See, the hardest part about it is the Tennessee Titans need a quarterback that's going to lead this team. But here's what I would do is I know everybody wants to trade down and get more picks. I understand that. But if I'm looking at the number 1 spot, the number 1 place, I'm going with the guy that's going to be an impact player. I know we say that and it sounds cliche, and I've been hearing it all week. We need a guy that's going to impact the game. I would go with Travis Hunter. The reason why I go with Travis Hunter, man, because he just instantly makes your team better, not just on offense, but actually on defense. And he brings a sense of, how can I say, a sense of joy to a team that's in disarray right now. So if I'm in that situation, I'm actually going Hunter because why? He can be the face of the franchise and also be an impact player, offense and defense.
So where are you playing him? Are you playing him at corner? Or are you playing him at wide receiver?
No, I do the exact same thing they kind of did with Deion Sanders. What I would do, his primary position is cornerback. I mean, he's definitely going to be a shutdown cornerback. But on offense, I would have some packages for him. I mean, in the NFL, he's not going to be able to play 150 cents. That you just can't do that. I'm not saying he can't, but it's kind of hard to do just because of the physicality of what's going on. I would have a package for him on offense. So say, if they win the coin toss and the Tennessee Titans get the ball, I'm going to start him at wide receiver, let him play 1 or 2 series, but his main position is cornerback.
What kind of wide receiver do you think he'd be?
I mean, he's an explosive wide receiver. I mean, just the one thing I love about him is his yards after catch. But here's what I want to see, with Travis Hunter. If I'm the wide receiver cornerback, I would teach him to have a game plan. When I say have a game plan, I would make sure he understands how to get off the line of scrimmage, how to stack and do all that stuff, and then what he does at the top of the routes. I understand that he's a great specimen. He's a great athlete. He's a great with yards after the catch. But now it's time to become a great wide receiver and do wide receiver things. Because in college, you can actually get away with that with the speed and, the burst off. All those things are great. But now when you get in the league, you're going to have to run routes. And I think if he does that, he's going to be actually unstoppable.
So you think he could be a high-end, top-of-the-league elite receiver?
I think he can. I mean, just look at his talent. It's kind of
so then why would I play him at corner? Wide receivers are more valuable than corners.
No, I understand it, but you just give him a package. I mean, look at Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders was the same way. He could have played wide receiver as opposed to cornerback, but I will put him at cornerback, but have a package for him to where you still get the impact from him, but not the volume of playing a whole bunch of snaps on offense.
Chris Sanders with us. Why no Abdul Carter? Why Hunter over Carter?
I mean, you're not going to lose. I mean, Abdul's a great player, but I want you to think about this. Just imagine adding him with Jeffrey Simmons, Arden Key, Sweat. I mean, you're talking about a defense that was pretty good this year to being a dominant defense when you add him. So regardless of who you get, because we're playing apples to oranges, you're still going to get a player that impacts the game. So, whoever they pick, him or Abdul, at the end of the day, you're getting a player that's going to impact not just the Tennessee Titans, but impact the whole organization.
Chris Sanders with us. Why no Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders?
I'm not saying no. I mean, I think that it all depends on what they do in free agent wise. I mean, if you go get a guy like Donald or Carr or some other quarterback that can come in as a veteran to where you let him come and play, and then if you do draft him, this is just my opinion, I wouldn't want him to play right away, and I'm going to tell you why. I think a lot of teams need to start following an example of what Andy Reid did when with the Kansas City Chiefs when he let Smith play and let Mahomes learn for a year and then let him play. So if the Tennessee Titans say if they do get Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders, get a veteran quarterback like Carr or Donald and let him sit for a year and then let him have reigns the years after that.
Who do you like more between Ward or Sanders?
Oh, gosh, Lee. I mean, they're two different quarterbacks, but if I had to pick, I'd probably I probably would go with Cameron Ward, and I'm gonna tell you why. And the reason why I go with Cameron Ward is his escapability. I kind of watched him on film a little bit. I know everybody talks about he has accuracy, but sometimes he makes some bonehead mistakes. Because if you look at the league with the complex defense and the defense that they throw, and they're blitzing and doing things that's crazy, you got to have a quarterback that's mobile. You got to have a quarterback that makes plays out of nothing. You got to make sure you have a quarterback that extends the play. And I think with Cameron Ward, I think he does a better job extending the play than Shadur Sanders. I think Shadur Sanders has a better arm than him, but I just think in escapability, I think that Cameron Ward is better. Why? Because he can extend the play and keep his eyes downfield.
Okay, so if I use the number 1 pick on Travis Hunter, as you're saying,
yes,
which I am not against, use the number 1 pick on Travis Hunter, am I now trading the 35th pick for Sam Darnold at quarterback? Because I can't get Sanders. I can't get Ward.
Yes.
I do not think Derrick Carr is available. So, and plus Derrick Carr's 35 years old. So I don't think Derrick Carr is available anyways.
Sure.
So are you trading the 35th pick for Sam
100%.
Darnold and giving him
100%.
a contract and giving him the Andy Reid, Alex Smith treatment?
1,000%. Absolutely. I mean, because the thing about it is you just addressed two needs on your team that you definitely need. What's one of the needs that they really need is a quarterback. You got a quarterback, you go get Donald. Yes, you may lose a draft pick, but you solidified a quarterback that's kind of basically established. And then you got a situation with the receiver position. I mean, if you look at some of the guys that they have on that team, I know that we have Calvin Ridley that's going to be great. We don't know what's NWI, but now you just put Travis Henry that can kind of take the place of playing wide receiver. So you just address both situations.
Chris Sanders is with us on the program. I do wonder when it comes to the Titans, how much they care about adding picks and how much they care about adding players with the picks that they acquire.
Yeah.
And the difference between the two, Chris.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. You don't want to just acquire a whole bunch of picks. Well, that's great. You better get some depth on this team that if somebody gets hurt, that you won't miss a beat. And that's the difference in this league because, if you look at the Tennessee Titans this whole season, Derrick alludes to it all the time. I don't want to steal his thunder, but he always talks about you have to build this roster. But like, what the heck does that mean? That means you got to build your roster with players that make plays. And I think that when you have all these picks, it's not just picking somebody. You got to pick somebody that's going to make plays, somebody that's going to impact the game on special teams or offense or defense. So it's not just accumulating a whole bunch of picks. It's about getting picks that players that can make plays.
Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders, as always, on our program, a very valuable part of our program, as always.
You, brother.
And we would never consider otherwise. Chris, great stuff.
Love you, brother. Appreciate you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us on the program. So Chris says use the 35th pick on Darnold once you use the first pick on Travis Hunter. I'm not against it. I think the argument is if Ward and Sanders are not at the class of Carter or Hunter, then it's okay. Hunter versus Carter, who would you take? And Chris sounds like he could live either way with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But then where are you getting your quarterback? If it's not going to be Ward or Sanders, where are you getting your quarterback? And to me, that leaves one option, which is Darnold. And I think Darnold's going to get tagged, so you have to trade for him. 615-737-1025, which is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program if you want to weigh in. We'll get back into your phones. Plus, I think Titan fans maybe being a little misled as far as how important the head coach is in all of this. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. Hiller takes great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Did you know that Hiller has been in business since 1990 and is family-owned and operated? That's right. Jimmy Hiller was recently named amongst the most admired CEOs because of the way he truly cares for his team and his clients. Hiller takes care of the customer on every job, every single time. And I know this because I use Hiller at my home, and they stand behind their work with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. And again, I know this because I use Hiller at my home. Learn more at happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call that face truck today. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. And I am now just getting the text line is just popping. Again, all I said yesterday was if I ran the Titans, my plan at quarterback, and there's still more tape to dive into. There's still the combine. There's still, I think I listened to Mike Borgonzi talk to the media at the Senior Bowl. And Mike Borgonzi said once the Senior Bowl's over, the scouts are going to get together for 17 days and grind out the tape. I feel bad. I'll be at the Super Bowl next week in New Orleans, and these poor scouts will be sitting there at St. Thomas Sports Park grinding out the difference between an 8-0 and a 7-3 and a whatever. But that's their business, not mine. But again, my plan going into this would be to offer Minnesota the 35th pick for Sam Darnold and sign Sam Darnold to a 4-year contract that's really a 3-year contract with an option. That's what I would do. I'm not high on Ward. I think he's a project. I'm not high on Sanders. I don't think he's good enough. That's what I would do. A 28-year-old quarterback in his prime, top 3 passer in the NFC, made the original Pro Bowl roster, 4,300 yards. The Titans have never had a 4,000-yard passer as the Tennessee Titans. He threw for 4,300 yards this season. And then I'm done at quarterback. Now I can go build up the rest of the team. And in year 2 of Darnold, year 3 of Darnold, I can start looking for my long-term potential future franchise quarterback. So that when Darnold is 32 and the deal's coming to an end, I've already got somebody that I love, not somebody like Ward or Sanders that I have to take because I don't have a quarterback coming down the pipeline. And my God, the amount of people who are just freaking worked up, I'm kind of stunned by. I'm kind of shocked because, again, you're probably the same people that said that the 38th pick was good enough for a run-stuffing DT. One texter, and I think this is a perfect text, said, dude won 14 games last year. We haven't won 14 games in 3 years, and he sucks. Yeah, exactly. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam from Portland is up next here on the program. Adam, go ahead.
It's just weird. You're being weird about him. Like, get his tattoo, Jared. I know you love him. We get it. And there's a big difference in saying, I like Sam Darnold. He's going to have a good year, which I give you credit for. You did that before he had a good year. But you put him on this team, and you get New York Jets Sam Darnold. He does well when he has the best wide receiver in the league and a baller tight end and a great coach. And you're going to put him in this poverty that we just now dealt with this past year. You're going to put Sam Darnold back into that. He's not going for 4,000. He'll go for like 2,500 yards before he gets hurt because he doesn't have offensive line. So, I mean, that's what it is, dude. I say get a rookie or get somebody who's not stupid expensive and look at getting good before you get in the new stadium. But you're dying on a hill that he is the
Will
savior.
the rookie not get hurt behind a bad offensive line?
He's proven that he cannot play well unless his team around him is really good, and we're not really good.
Okay, so, but hold on. You say just draft a rookie. So I've got no offensive line. You and I can agree with that. But if I draft a rookie, is he not going to get hurt behind the same offensive line?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, Jared. There's no answer. Like it's a gotcha, right? Like there's no answer. But if you're going to put somebody up there that don't cost your team, a third of their money or whatever, that 50-something million, because you can't. There's nobody that's going to succeed behind that offensive line this year. But I'm not going to do that to Darnold and destroy his career again, and then have to pay him. So I don't think it's a good answer.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying. I guess again, if that's a problem for Darnold, then that's a problem. Thank you, Adam. If that's a problem for Sam Darnold, that's a problem for everybody. Like, again, Derrick Carr. First of all, Derrick Carr is not available. Like, I don't understand this infatuation with Derrick Carr. He's not as good as Darnold. He's older than Darnold, and he's not available. Darnold is a pending free agent with a team that used a top 10 draft choice on a quarterback last year. Darnold is available for the right price. I assume. Carr's not available. Who's going to be their quarterback if they get rid of Derrick Carr? But the reason I bring this up is, so Darnold's going to get hurt behind the line, so there's no point in trading for him. But Derrick Carr, who is hurt right now, isn't. Justin Fields isn't. Justin Fields has been in the NFL for 4 years now. He's won 14 games total. And I have to dispel the myth a little bit that Sam Darnold is only good on Minnesota and only good with Kevin O'Connell as his coach and only good with Justin Jefferson at wide receiver, because the reason I was so high on Sam Darnold going into this year was what he did in his last year in Carolina. In his last year at Carolina, he was 4-2, had a higher QBR than Aaron Rodgers, had a higher quarterback rating, had a 90-plus quarterback rating with the same team, Baker Mayfield. And I think we can all agree, Baker Mayfield has resurrected his career. And I don't know if I would say that Baker Mayfield is a franchise quarterback, but Baker Mayfield is a legitimate starting quarterback. They're paying him $33 million. Baker is worth it. Baker will be their quarterback for the next 4 years. Baker was 1-5. With the same team in Carolina. Same team, same coaches, same players. 1-5. Now, we know Baker's not a bum. So I watched Sam Darnold with Steve Wilkes as the interim coach. I watched Sam Darnold and DJ Moore get Carolina back into the playoff hunt that year. 4-2. I'm like, this guy looks like a legitimate player. I was stunned that Arthur Smith did not bring him to Atlanta to back up, quote unquote, Desmond Ridder, and he would have been starting in Atlanta if they had done that by about week 4. But he goes to San Francisco, which if you're going to go anywhere to learn, that's where you want to go. So when he went to Minnesota, I kept saying this time last year, we had a Jared versus Joe, where Joe and Caroline, oh, Sam Darnold sucks. And I said, you'll see. And he signed with Minnesota, and I was worried that after they drafted JJ that he wasn't going to get a shot. But when JJ got hurt and it was Sam's team, I said, you will see. And you saw better than I thought. 14 wins, making the Pro Bowl again on the first ballot. But when you tell me, oh, that's just all Minnesota. That's just all Minnesota. Well, then why was he 4-2 and significantly better than Baker with the same team in Carolina? Somebody give me an answer to that. The distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat who hates Sam Darnold, you give me, why was he so much better than Baker Mayfield that 1 year in Carolina where they were on the same team? Before you start giving me the one-hit wonder Sam Darnold. Let's go to Miles, who's up next here on our program on Shadur Sanders. Thank you for calling and thank you for waiting. Miles, go ahead.
So this is Miles coming in from Paris, Tennessee, of course. And my thoughts is, can Shadur really compete in the NFL?
I mean, define compete. Can he be a franchise quarterback in the NFL, or can he start games in the NFL? What are you asking?
Franchise.
Yeah, me personally, thank you for calling, Miles. Me personally, no. I don't think he can be. I think he's too small, and I don't think he has enough talent. And the Deion Circus stuff does bother me. Colorado's opponents were incredibly awful this year. They drew a beautiful schedule in the ACC West, which is what I call the Big 12. You know, they didn't play Arizona State this year, which was a legitimate, bona fide, good team. They played BYU in the bowl game. They got housed. They got beat by Kansas State, who was a ranked team. You know, he didn't beat anybody good this year. He didn't beat anybody good last year. All of that, to me, is a problem. So you guys can love on Shadur. I think Shadur is being elevated by two factors that have nothing to do with his ability. Nothing that will do with him when he has to get on the field and beat Patrick Mahomes. And one is it's a bad quarterback class. If this were last year, I think Shadur Sanders is behind all of them. I think he's behind Williams, May, Daniels, Penix, Nix, and McCarthy. So I think that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is he's famous because of who his dad is. And so do I think he can be a franchise guy? No, I don't think he has the talent to be a franchise quarterback. So as far as Shadur, I'm out. I do not buy it, do not see it, nothing. 615-737-1025 on our program if you want to weigh in. One texter says, what would your plan be if Minnesota doesn't want to trade Sam Darnold? That's Larry from Columbia. So, again, I have a hard time believing because they used a top 10 pick on J.J. McCarthy that they wouldn't take a very valuable pick at 35 in exchange for Darnold. I have a hard time believing that. But if, again, we hear this all the time, which is, well, they don't know about Sam or they don't know about JJ, so why not keep Sam? We hear that a lot. If that's the case, that means that they actually probably think they made a mistake on JJ, and that would be why they wouldn't trade Sam, and then they sign Sam, and then you have to decide, okay, do you take Cam Ward, suck it up, and try to hope that he can become something? Or do you go the bridge route where you know you're probably going to lose a bunch of games? Fields, Mac Jones, Daniel Jones, that kind of guy. More of your phones at 615-737-1025, which is the phone number, 615-737-1025, here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
We want you to build this team that you believe is the right way. And if you don't think a quarterback is, you don't think there's a quarterback out there via draft, trade, or free agency that gets us on the path towards where we want to go, don't force the issue. In my experience, Mel, and I think yours would echo this, most owners don't think that way, right? When they have the number one pick in the draft and they've got a lot of money to spend and they just came off of a really bad season, they're saying to their GM or their head coach, let's find a quarterback, whether it's through the draft or free agency or a trade. The trade market is going to be cold this offseason. The free agency market revolves around one guy. That's Sam Darnold. And by the way, Sam can only go to one team. So we'll see where Sam ends up, but it's not like it's a slam dunk that it is the Titans.
That was Field Yates. And again, they're saying, hey, there's one guy out there. Not that, hey, the Titans need to take Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders because they're better than Sam, but because you may not even get Sam. And I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. Let's go back to your phones. As promised, Chris in Brentwood has been waiting patiently and is up next on the program. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you that Sam Darnold is our best option, and that's obvious. But to the point of the piece you just played, there are other teams that don't have quarterbacks either. You got the Jets, the Browns, the Raiders, the Giants. Everybody's going to be going after him. So what's the plan B, and B, what would you be willing to do to get it?
Okay, so let's go over what you just said, and I want you to stay on because I'm asking these questions. You brought up 4 teams that don't have quarterbacks: the Giants, the Raiders, the Jets, and the Browns, right?
Right. Obviously, the Jets are not going to take him, but
bingo. So cross them out. I think we can cross the Browns out too. Like, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to pay $40 million for a quarterback while paying $45 million to another quarterback.
Okay.
So cross them out. So now it's you, the Giants, and the Raiders. Now, with the Giants, I think there's a big question of, can you bring Sam Darnold back to New York? Like, can you do that given that he already has been the quarterback in New York? And then the second part is, is that enough when Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are trying to get their quarterback to save their jobs? Would that be enough? The Giants have a higher pick in the second round than you do. So if they offered the second round pick, they could, in theory, entice them. The Raiders don't. So the 35th pick would be better than anything the Raiders could give, short of the Raiders trading the 6th pick for Darnold, which nobody would do. I would not trade the 6th pick for Sam Darnold. So that's why I actually think you're in a pretty good spot with the 35th pick. Maybe the Raiders could argue that they'll throw their 3rd rounder in as part of the deal, and then you've got a serious issue there. But there's one other part of this. Chris, thank you for your call. There's one other part of this that I think I'm allowed to say. I know Sam Darnold loves Nashville. Like, I was told, I talked to somebody who would know, and I said, does Sam Darnold want to play for the Titans? And I was told, we'll see. And I said, okay. I said, but in all seriousness, you know what? He said, Sam Darnold loves Nashville. And so, again, I'm not saying that Nashville is going to be the reason that he would pick to come here when, again, money talks. But to the point that I think we can rule out Cleveland because of the money. We can rule out the Jets because of the history. When it comes to you and the Raiders, when acquiring Darnold off the franchise tag, if that's in fact what happens, he has to agree to a contract extension, or else nobody's going to make that kind of trade. So if he wants to be here, that is pretty important. Let's go to Anduin, who's up next here on our program and has been waiting very patiently. Anduin, go ahead.
Hi, Jared. Thank you for taking my call. Now, this one here is a doozy. So if the report is true that Chad Brinker wanted Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan out and Amy said no, then I think Chad Brinker could have changed his plan, called an audible, and said, fine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to get Sam Darnold, but I'm going to get a bridge quarterback like Justin Fields, for example. We're going to go bad, and then we're going to fire Brian Callahan, and then we're going to get Mike McCarthy, which I just saw yesterday, who surprisingly is not interested in a coaching job for a year. So that's my thought, that Chad Brinker is planning to That's like my declaration. Mike McCarthy is going to be the Tennessee Titans head coach next year. I'll hang up and listen.
Anduin, thank you. David, do you have the grid in front of you right now?
I do, yes.
Okay, will you read verbatim what the 3:15 segment originally was supposed to be?
If I was Brian Callahan, there's news out there that I wouldn't like, and that's the big Mike McCarthy isn't getting a job in 2025. Now, I'm not a big Mike McCarthy guy whatsoever, but I am aware that Big Mike was a big Packer guy, and Big Chad is a big Packer guy. And I could see Mike Borgonzi looking at big fat offensive coach in Big Mike and seeing shades of Andy Reid. Guys love guys they've worked with before. I'm kind of shocked Big Mike didn't get a job, and it is kind of ironic that ended right there.
Okay. So, again, that's David reciting my words that are in the grid. If I was Brian Callahan, to the caller's point, I would not like the news that Big Mike is not getting a job this year. Because, again, right now, the who are you going to hire if you fire Brian Callahan is right there in Big Fatso Mike McCarthy. And look, I ate a fried Oreo yesterday, a fried brownie, so maybe I shouldn't be calling him Big Fatso. But again, he's got that kind of big fat Andy Reid vibe. Now, I don't think he's the kind of coach that Andy Reid is. I think Andy Reid is a great coach. I think Mike McCarthy is an average coach. But Chad Brinker loves the Packers. And here's Mr. Packer. And so that would be news, again, like I wrote in the grid, that would be news if I was Brian Callahan that I would not like, which is Big Mike is on the free agent market next year. Mike McCarthy will get a job next season, slam dunk. The same way Vrabel was for sure going to get a job this year. I would not like it if I was Brian Callahan. I'd be worried. Now, to the caller's point about sabotaging the season, here's why this is not going to happen. Because Chad Brinker is in today. But if there's anything you've learned about Amy over the last 3 years, it should be that just because you're in today does not mean you will be in tomorrow. Mike Keith asked Amy when they fired Mike Vrabel, why should the fans be excited? And Amy's response was, well, we have a good, exciting young quarterback. We have a ran. We have cap space. And now what are the three things that don't matter this year? That young quarterback, gone. That general manager, gone. And the Titans are currently demonizing free agency. So, again, if I was Brinker, and I think Brinker's smart enough to know this, I would not take next year for granted. Because if you sabotage the season and you win 4 games, Amy will fire your ass. And if she doesn't, I'll be shocked. So I don't think he's trying to sabotage the season. But what I think might be a little bit more likely is this team wins 8 games next year, and then they turn around and they fire Callahan, and then they go get Big Mike. And I would be worried about that if I was Brian Callahan. In fact, I am not convinced that the reason there aren't more changes to the coaching staff. Look, I don't think Denard Wilson's a very good coordinator. I don't think the Titans defense was very good last year. I don't think Denard Wilson, again, you played Indianapolis and you let the quarterback and the running back run for 300 yards. What did you think Indy was going to do? Did you game plan for Peyton Manning? Like, what happened? So I don't think Denard Wilson's a very good coordinator. They never got stops when they needed to. They didn't turn the ball over a whole lot. They didn't really sack the quarterback very often. I mean, again, I think that they were second in the league in total defense because their special teams and quarterback gave up short fields. So I don't think that the defense was worth a crap, and I would have fired Denard Wilson, and I would have hired an experienced veteran defensive coordinator, handed him the defense, and said, here you go, Mike Zimmer. It's your defense. Here you go, Brian Flores. It's your defense. Here you go, Vic Fangio. It's your defense. That's what I would have done. And instead, they're running it back with Wilson. And I wonder if they're doing that because they don't want to pay another defensive coordinator, because they're going to fire Callahan at the end of the year and then have to go get another. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. I do have to address one text. Michael says that the Titans could use the money for Sam Darnold on some offensive line pieces like Trey Smith. Oh, that's it. A $20 million guard. That's going to save the Titans. A guard. Get the hell out of here. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. Coming up next, there was some news yesterday that Brian Callahan shared that might be newsworthy to you, but it is not newsworthy to me. And I don't think it matters as far as the 2025 Titans are concerned. We'll get to that next. I'm going to Company 102.5 The Game.
Should the Titans stay with Will Levis and tank again for a better quarterback class in 2026? What are you doing, GM Rick?
Yeah, you can't tank now. That's just. I apologize, but I don't. That question gets my dander up a little bit. You're going to go into this whole off season. You're going to have a new general manager coming in place. You got a coach that's going into a second year that better show some progress, or else he's going to be out of a job eventually. So no, do not tank, because you don't know what the quarterback class. We just talked about it, but what if a guy loses his leg out there? Or someone has a devastating injury. You don't know what this quarterback class. Hell, we thought Beck was the franchise quarterback of the world going into it, and then now he's coming back and went to the transfer portal to Miami. So no, go out and get, if you really believe in one of these guys, go out and get that quarterback. Now, if the new general manager comes in place and they say, I don't want to touch either one of these guys, I understand that. But you better look at options in free agency then, because I don't know if Will Levis is the answer.
That was Rick Spielman, former NFL general manager, on his podcast with the First Pick from CBS Sports, saying, yeah, no, you're not running it back with Levis. You're not tanking. So Brian Callahan met with the media yesterday at the Senior Bowl and was asked about Levis and said, Will Levis is going to California to train with quarterback guru Jordan Palmer. Now, I think I remember Jordan Palmer talking about Josh Allen's ascension and saying that during COVID, like the COVID shutdowns in 2020, Josh Allen, California kid, Josh Allen was out in California training every day with Jordan Palmer because there was nothing else for him to do. Again, everything's shut down. You can't go anywhere. You can't, no OTAs, no. So I'll just work on my mechanics with the guru for the entire offseason. And apparently that's what Will Levis is going to do. According to Pro Football Talk, the Titans insist they haven't given up on Levis. Levis will travel to California to work with private quarterbacks coach Jordan Palmer this offseason. Palmer has worked with some of the best quarterbacks in the game. Callahan said, quote, I had some things for him too that we both talked about. I think he's going to spend some time with Jordan Palmer out in California. I think Jordan is one of the better guys out there right now in terms of working with pro quarterbacks. So hopefully that's an illuminating process for him, a different way of doing things. So he's going to get to do the whole thing, maybe be out there for 2 months or whatever it is with Jordan for that time. Some of the footwork, the base stuff, blah, 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 blah. Let me just say this. I don't care. I don't care what Will Levis is doing. I don't care who Will Levis is dating. I don't care what mayonnaise Will Levis is eating. I don't care about any of that anymore because the Titans are done with Will Levis. And if the Titans are done with Will Levis, I'm done with Will Levis too. This is how this works. Guy gets a shot to be a starting quarterback. The entire organization, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, is pinning all of their hopes on this young guy. He fails miserably. They move on. That's how it works in the NFL. Once a team gives up, they're done. And the Titans gave up on Will Levis. I mean, they started Mason Rudolph for basically the last fourth of the season. They're done. Now, they're not going to come out and say they're done with Will Levis, just like the Steelers last year didn't come out and say they were done with Kenny Pickett. They said they were going to bring in competition for Kenny Pickett. That's what they said. What'd they do? They shipped him off to Philadelphia for a bag of footballs. I believe they got a third in return and they sent a fourth and 2 sevenths or something. Like it was, one of those Fakakta trades. It was a bag of footballs in order to acquire Kenny Pickett. So that's what's going to happen with Levis. The Titans are telling Levis, go work with Jordan Palmer and see what happens. But they're not actually going to keep him as the quarterback around here. So me caring about Will Levis, this time last year, I cared about everything Will Levis did because he was the potential franchise quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. Now, he's going to be a backup on somebody else's team. This time last year, I was at the Super Bowl. And there was a ping pong tournament that Procter & Gamble put on. And they must have spent a lot of money because they got Trevor Lawrence to do it. And they got Saquon Barkley to do it. And so they got a lot of actual dudes to do this ping pong tournament. And Levis was part of it. It was actually funny. The guy that won, Dustin Hopkins, the kicker for the Browns, really, really good guy. He and I chatted for a while afterwards, but the whole reason I went to this ping pong tournament was because Will Levis, when it was going to be the Procter & Gamble people, Tide and Head and Shoulders and the Old Spice, which, by the way, I did get some Old Spice body wash that they gave me at the ping pong thing, and it was some of the best smelling body wash I ever received.
Really?
But I did not buy more of it once I ran out.
That's fair.
But again, I sat through this 2-hour ping pong event in which I was watching Suits on my phone for pretty much the entire time. And I was there. Jim Wyatt was there to talk to Levis too. And I did it because they promised me, hey, we'll get you 10 minutes with Levis after it's over. So I sat down with Levis. We interviewed Levis. And then at 11 o'clock at night in Vegas, I walked back over to Radio Row and I sent the interview file into Chase so that we could run a promo the next day. Say, at 2 o'clock, Jared Stillman sits down with Will Levis. That's how much he mattered last year. This year, he doesn't matter. They're going to trade Levis. They're going to trade him to a team like Jacksonville, where one of the coaches likes him. They're going to trade him there where he's going to be the backup. They're going to get a 5th in 2026 in exchange for him, and he'll be on their team. And I know you're going to say, but Jared, he's a cheap backup. He doesn't have a lot of money. That's better than going out and paying $40 million for Darnold and then another backup. And again, that's just not how these things work in the NFL. When Chicago was done with Justin Fields, they didn't say, well, that's going to be a cheap backup for Caleb. They got rid of him. When New England was done with Mac Jones, they didn't look at it and say, well, he could be a cheap backup option to Drake May. They got rid of him. That's what teams in the NFL do. When you're done with a young quarterback, you get rid of him. San Francisco, done with Trey Lance. They got rid of him. Pittsburgh, done with Kenny Pickett. They got rid of him. You, done with Malik Willis. You got rid of him. That's what you do in this league. The one team that didn't do that, the one team that was like, let's try to squeeze a little bit more juice out of this orange, that was the New York Jets a couple of years ago when the New York Jets said, oh, Zach can back up Aaron. And then one series into the season, Zach Wilson's back as a starting quarterback. That's not going to happen here. My guess is Sam Darnold's going to be the starting quarterback. The Titans are going to sign a backup who is a Scarbini, and then they're going to draft a guy in the 6th round. Will Howard, something like that, and that guy will be on the bench for most of the year. That's what's happening. One texter says, Jared, if the Titans are done with Levis, why are they sending him to California to go to QB class? They're not paying for that. Here's what happened. Right now, he's under contract with the Titans. The Titans aren't going to tell everybody they're out on him because, again, even though everybody already knows that, you never publicly say something like that until you have to. So, they're going to say he's going to go out there. He probably asked Brian Callahan, Coach, what can I do to get better? He said, oh, you can go work out with Jordan Palmer. Good luck. That's what they did. But the idea that Will Levis is going to be the quarterback, the Titans have decided to blame everything that happened last year on 3 people. Rand Carthon, Will Levis, and Colt Anderson. They've already fired Rand Carthon. Brian Callahan was kicking and screaming, but they fired Colt Anderson, and they fired Will Levis. And they're eventually going to make it official when they're allowed to. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. More of your phones. Plus, if you are in this Justin Fields camp, you love Justin Fields, you want Justin Fields, you just, oh, God, he's never won anything, and all these teams don't like him, but you've got good news. We'll get to that next. I'm on a company, 102.5 The Game.
Let's move to the Pittsburgh Steelers, once again facing a choice at quarterback. Team owner and president Art Rooney said yesterday that his preference is to sign either Justin Fields or Russ, but probably not both. Tone, if you had to pick, who?
Yeah, I would take Justin Fields. Russell Wilson is 36 years old. I think we saw the best of what Russell Wilson has left in the first 7 games he started this year for the Steelers. He was 6-1 in those games. He had 12 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions, and the team averaged 28 points. And then the roof fell in, okay? And in the next 5 games, they lost 5 games consecutively, including a playoff game. They only averaged 14 points a game. Russell Wilson's statistics were okay, but I think that people thought he would be expendable there. The reason I would take Fields is because Fields is a really good runner. Now, he's an okay passer. He's not any better than that, but he had career marks this year in the games he started for Pittsburgh. He had his best passer rating. He had his best completion was best. And in Chicago, he started, I believe, 38 games and had 41 turnovers. And this year started 6 and only had 2 turnovers.
That was a PTI talking about the Justin Fields news along with Russell Wilson. Art Rooney II, the owner of the Steelers, or maybe the third, I can't keep up with it, did a sit down with the team's website and said, we want one of those 2 back, but we only want one of them, and we don't know who it is. And I was stunned that Art Rooney did it. But again, what I started thinking about more was the why. See, I was talking about this topic last night on SiriusXM, and I had to explain to that audience that the owner does not have to talk to the media in the NFL. The GM does, the coach does, the players do. But as we know around here, the owner does not have to talk at all, even to the team-friendly media. The owner doesn't have to talk. The owner here didn't even go to the press conference. You all know that. So when Art Rooney sits down with the team's website and makes it abundantly clear that we want to sign one of these 2 and let the other guy go, I start thinking about why. Why is he the one delivering the message? Not Omar Khan, the general manager, not Mike Tomlin, the coach. And why is he putting that out there? Again, I know the Titans are done with Will Levis. The Titans know the Titans are done with Will Levis, but they're not going to say it because nobody spells out their plan ahead of time unless there's a reason. So if you're a believer in Justin Fields, like Joe Rexroad is, I am not. I think Justin Fields sucks. I don't think he can pass, and I think if you make him your starting quarterback, you win 6 games at best. Well, the good news is, if you're a Fields believer, I think he's getting to free agency. Why? Because I think that's why Art Rooney went public with, we're going to pick one guy or the other guy. We just don't know who yet, because they're going to pick Russell Wilson. I'm with Tony Kornheiser. I think it makes more sense. Take the 26-year-old over the 36-year-old. But again, why would Art Rooney be coming out publicly saying we're picking one guy over the other guy? There has to be a reason. And the guys making the decisions, general manager Omar Khan, head coach Mike Tomlin, offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, they were all there last year. And they had the choice, Russell or Fields. They picked Russell. They had the choice. At the end of the year, when the Steelers season was going to pot, they had the choice, Russell or Fields. They chose Russell. They've made it abundantly clear. They believe in Russell over Fields. So if they're going to sign one of the 2 guys, they're going to sign Russell. And the reason Art Rooney made it public was because he's trying to gain leverage over Russell. It's the same reason why it's starting to come out right now that Russell and Pete Carroll have mended fences. Because Russell wants the leverage with Pittsburgh of, if you don't sign me, I'll go to the Raiders. There's a home for me with the Las Vegas Raiders. Pete Carroll is not going to the Raiders and hitching his wagons to Russell Wilson. But again, Russ needs leverage. Pittsburgh is using Fields to give themselves leverage over Russ. Pro Football Focus came out and had the contract expectations. Sam Darnold, 3 years, $41.25 million on a contract, according to PFF. Russell, 2 years, $35.5. $35 million is what they're looking at for Russell Wilson. And the reason I say this is because Russell played last year for $39 million, but 37.8 of it was paid by the Denver Broncos. So Russell still got paid last year, even though he didn't get paid by the Steelers. And the Steelers were glad to have Russell because they paid him $1.2 million. So if they bring Russell Wilson back, they're going to have to pay $20, $30, $35 million. Again, if the going rate for a franchise quarterback is $55 million, that's Burrow and Tua and Love and Trevor Lawrence. Again, not elite quarterbacks. Dak's 60. If the going rate for Jordan Love is $55 million, Russell, who won 10 games this year and made the playoffs, even in his old Pawpaw State, is still probably, like PFF said, $35, $40 million. Well, the Steelers don't want to pay that. So what the Steelers are doing is they're setting the tone right now. They are telling Russell Wilson's camp, if you come to us and you say you want $35 million, we're going to go sign Fields. I think it's an empty threat. But that's why Art Rooney came out and said what he said. Because they're going to sign Russell and they're just trying to get the price as low as humanly possible. Again, I don't know why they're doing it. I wouldn't do it if I were the Steelers. I mean, I probably wouldn't sign Fields either, but I wouldn't put another quarter in the merry-go-round when it comes to Fields. To Russell. But that's, again, why I think they're doing it. I think that the Steelers are using Fields as leverage to get the best deal they can out of Russell, and then they'll re-sign him. I think Russell is trying to use Pete Carroll in Vegas as leverage to get as much money as he can out of the Steelers. But I think we have to have a discussion about the fact that Russell Wilson was on the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears said, nah, we're good. No, thank you. Shipped him off for a bag of footballs. The Pittsburgh Steelers got Justin Fields. Again, Russell Wilson's an old pawpaw. There is no linear growth with Russell at quarterback. Fields started off well. They won games. And Mike Tomlin and the Steelers said, nah, we're good. And now, here we are looking at, hey, the Steelers are making a calculated decision. They're using the media to position themselves where they can once again pick Russell over Fields. I'd say that's pretty alarming. So, again, if you're a Justin Fields guy, and I'm not, but if you are a Justin Fields guy, the good news is I think Fields is getting to free agency. One texter said, Russ is going to his 10th Pro Bowl. How watered down is the Pro Bowl? I think that, I forget who it was. I want to say it was Mike Sando maybe put out there on Twitter a couple weeks ago that they now need to do a delineation between who was originally named to the Pro Bowl and who ended up in the Pro Bowl. Because Drake May is not a Pro Bowler. And so when I look at a guy who makes the original Pro Bowl, that is truly being named to the All-Star team. That's worth something. But then once all the guys drop out, and it's like Drake May and Mac Jones, Pro Bowl. It's like, okay, that's kind of hard. That's kind of tough. One texter says, I've been a Steelers fan since birth. I hope the Titans do not grab Fields. He was mediocre at best. It's not saying a whole lot about Wilson, I guess. Again, I think the Steelers are saying, oh, no, we're taking Russell over Fields. My entire feeling about the Steelers' usage of Justin Fields was, well, Russell's not awful. Okay, you want to go to Fields? No. It never, no. Oh, no. Good God, no. Oof. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Brian Callahan meets with the media at the Senior Bowl. And I have one very big Brian Callahan question that I think I know the answer to. We'll get to that next. Stillman Co, 1025 The Game. Stillman Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So draft season is officially upon us. The East-West Shrine Bowl is in the rear view. The Titans have sent their entire delegation out to the Senior Bowl, which don't think I'm not laughing my ass off over the fact that this time last year, Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan stayed back because we have to build out the coaching staff. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, what? Build out the coaching staff? But we're talking about the Senior Bowl. Like, this is where you view the players. You can worry about all that after the Senior Bowl. You can do that at the Senior Bowl. But the Senior Bowl is a big personnel. Oh, Jared, you don't understand. I mean, I remember last year, Mike Keith, Dave McGinnis, Rhett Bryan, Ramon Foster, all sitting around yucking it up with Rand Carthon about, Rand, it's a good thing you're not at the Senior Bowl. Now, a year later, they're not only all at the Senior Bowl, Brinker's at the Senior Bowl, Ziegler's at the Senior Bowl, Reggie McKenzie's at the Senior Bowl, Borgonzi's at the Senior Bowl. The coaches are at the Senior Bowl. Everybody's at the Senior Bowl now. So this year, the Senior Bowl matters. Last year, you'll see, Jared, it's a new era. The Rams don't send their coaches. And now they're all at the Senior Bowl. So, yes, I am laughing my tush off at all of that. And this is why, again, people got all worked up about Paul's story about Rand falling asleep on the plane because, again, the moral of the story was Rand was lazy. And now the Senior Bowl apparently matters around here. Mike Borgonzi was talking to the Titans website about how the Senior Bowl was a big deal in Kansas City when you know their coaches can't go to the Senior Bowl because every year they're getting ready for the Super Bowl, and they still send their personnel people out. I digress. So this time last year, the Titans were run very differently than they're run now. That doesn't mean that the Titans are run well right now. We'll see. But this time last year, the Titans were all about collaboration. They were all about everybody pulling the rope in the same direction, alignment. Rand Carthon's the GM. Chad Brinker promoted to help out Rand. Brian Callahan hired. Those two were going to work together like there was no tomorrow. And last year, Brian Callahan's opinion mattered when it came to the quarterback. And his opinion mattered when it came to personnel. And his opinion mattered because the guy technically picking the players leaned heavily on him. It was part of the job. Hey, Brian, we're going to hire you, but we're going to lean heavily on your expertise to get you players you want to coach. But that was last year. Again, last year, the Senior Bowl didn't matter. This year, everybody's at the Senior Bowl. It's a different organization. And so when I see Brian Callahan holding media availabilities, websites on the Titans article about Jim Wyatt at the East-West Bowl catching up with Brian Callahan, a video of Amy Wells interviewing Brian Callahan at the Senior Bowl, and Brian Callahan said this, and Brian Callahan said that, and Brian Callahan on Shadur Sanders, and Brian Callahan. To me, it goes in one ear and out the other. I do not pay attention, do not care what Brian Callahan says. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I don't think Brian Callahan's opinion has ever mattered less than it does right now. When it comes time to actually picking the players, Callahan will have an opinion. I'm just not sure they'll listen to it. But the guys, the scouts, the personnel people, they've been grinding the tape all year. They've been meeting these kids at practices and games and things of that magnitude. They've done all their homework. Brian Callahan's been busy getting ready for the Jags. So now Brian Callahan parachutes into the scouting process, and he's now going to evaluate the guys and be a part of the meetings and do the whiteboard and everything else. But that doesn't mean that what he thinks matters. I see Callahan doing interviews with the team's website. Nick Holtz is at the East-West Shrine Bowl. And I'm telling you right now, the first overall pick, the decision the Titans make with the first overall pick, will have virtually zero input from Brian Callahan. Zero. Let's just think about the organizational structure of the Titans and the way that they're built. Chad Brinker is in control of all things football, period. Mike Borgonzi has been hired and charged with making the pick. Chad Brinker hired Mike Borgonzi. Mike Borgonzi kissed the rings when he got the job, saying the reason I took it was because of Chad Brinker. And those two men were right there, seated next to one another at the press conference. Mike Borgonzi says, I'm going to have final say over the 53-man roster, even though technically I don't have final say, which means he's going to have essentially final say. Borgonzi has been charged with making the pick. Reggie McKenzie and Dave Ziegler have been added to the mix. So I'm sorry, but if you think Mike Borgonzi is going to risk his career and blowing the number 1 overall draft pick your first day on the job is the easiest way to do it, if you think Mike Borgonzi is going to risk his career and leave the Chiefs and Mahomes, and if you didn't get this job this year, I bet you'd eventually get a job because you're with the Chiefs. If you think he's going to risk that on a coach who's won 18% of his games, you're crazy. They don't care what Brian Callahan thinks. They're going to go get whatever player they like the best, and they're going to go have Brian Callahan coach him. And Brian Callahan is only there because they know how it would look if he wasn't there. If they had to Borgonzi and Brinker and Ziegler and Reggie McKenzie all at the Senior Bowl, and they told Callahan to stay home, they know how that would look. So they're not going to do that. They're going to bring him along. He's going to represent the organization, do some interviews. But as far as his opinion mattering, zero. This is not going to be a thing where, hey, Brian Callahan's banging the table to Mike Borgonzi saying, I've got to have Shadur Sanders, and Mike Borgonzi saying, well, I really want Abdul Carter, but now I guess I'll draft Shadur. That is not going to happen. Now, Callahan will go to these things, and he'll be involved, and he'll ask questions, and he'll take notes, and he'll be in the board meetings and everything else. Callahan will report back, and what he sees and what he likes, he'll tell them, just like everybody else does. But if you think Mike Borgonzi is going to sit down when the real decision is getting made, and I love how these football guys talk, when it comes to, hey, making a decision as far as what you're going to do with the number 1 pick, and they're like, well, we don't make the decision on draft night. I didn't ask on draft night. I asked on making the decision, period. When these things get hammered out, he's not going to sit down with Brian Callahan and say, okay, coach, what do you think? He's not doing that. He's not going to say, all right, coach, what do we need to do at QB? You tell me. You're the guru. We'll get your guy. You go. Just tell me. No shot. They say Chad Brinker is there to break ties. Remember, I think that was the line that Burke Nihill used in the statement when they fired Rand. Chad Brinker will break ties. Who do you think Chad Brinker's going to side with? You think he's going to side with the coach that he wanted to fire? Or do you think he's going to side with the guy he hired? And Brian Callahan, by the way, Brian Callahan is probably smart enough to know this. Like, he'll say, hey, really excited to get to work with Mike and the staff. We're going to get together and we're going to hammer it out and we're going to compare notes and we're going to uncover every stone and we're going to break down every play and we're going to do this all together as a group. But, I'm proud to be working with Chad and Mike. These guys, they know ball. He'll say all the right things. Brian Callahan knows. He's not going into the war room and saying, all right, guys, here's who I like. He's smart enough to know that. He's smart enough to know that he sits there and he answers when he's spoken to. And let me just say this. This is not conjecture, what is about to come out of my mouth. The Tennessee Titans, if they pick a quarterback, do not plan on picking a quarterback who is scheme dependent on any head coach. Specifically, since, again, they only have one head coach right now, this one. You know, there's a difference between, I'm telling you, I think that they're going to pick a quarterback who's not scheme dependent, and I'm telling you, it is not about scheme dependent as far as Brian Callahan's concerned. And if they were worried about scheme dependency, Brian Callahan wouldn't be the coach anymore. So I hope it works out for Brian Callahan. I don't like the lack of changes on the coaching staff. And if I was a betting man, I would bet against him. But if you think Brian Callahan has any meaningful input on the number one overall pick, outside of anything that a scout could find out and report up the food chain, you know, I actually heard that Jameis Winston stole crab legs, that kind of stuff, you are mistaken. Callahan's opinion has never mattered less. And it does not matter now. He's there. They'll tell you we're all talking and working together. But they are going to draft a player, give him to Callahan, and say, go coach him. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do this offseason. Now, there may be some in free agency where it's like, hey, Brian, what would you think if we went out and got this guy? But it's not a, hey, we're convinced we're signing Nick Bolton to be an inside backer. Brian, are you okay with that? And before, it was Rand and Brian Callahan hunting together. Not anymore. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So I found a fascinating quote yesterday that kind of the goriness of the quote, I think, will lead a lot of people to, have this quote stand out to them. But that's not why it stood out to me. And this might actually be pretty good news for the Titans. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
I'm not passing up on a quarterback when I got Mr. Mayonnaise, Will Levis at the quarterback spot. I'll be damned if I'm going to do that. I'm not doing it. I need that. That brother need to go. I got to get me another quarterback. I can't tell my team that, you know what, work your tail off, bust your tail, do all you can, you understand, because we care and we're trying to win, and I'm going to have Will Levis as my quarterback. It cannot happen. Now, that's not to say you can't get rid of him and get somebody else. I understand that, please. I truly, truly do. But here's what I'm going to say to you. Shadur Sanders ain't no damn slouch. This brother has that it factor. Everybody says he can ball. Now, if you can't ball and you got a bunch of Daniel Jones in the draft, I get that part. That's not what they saying about Cam Ward. That's not what they're saying about Shadur Sanders. And when you have the kind of pedigree that Sanders has had, and he has shown himself to be a big-time quarterback, I'm Tennessee. I'm not dismissing that possibility. I'm not ruling that out. That kid can be the future. And that was Travis Hunter's teammate. Remember, Shadur Sanders at one point was a Heisman candidate. It's just that Travis Hunter took it to another level because he's on both sides of the ball. You understand? And playing every down. It's absolutely incredible what he's doing. But y'all have always said you're not winning in this day and age without a quarterback. They don't have one. They don't have one. I'm going Shadur Sanders.
Stephen A says take Shadur Sanders. Now, let me ask you this question. If you sat down with Stephen A. Smith and you said, all right, Stephen A., David Jane's in for Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you said to Stephen A. Smith, hey, can you name me 10 players in this year's draft? Do you think he could do it?
I don't think so.
So he'd get Sanders and Ward, Hunter.
I think you get Carter.
Do you really think he'd get Abdul Carter?
I think so. I think they've been talking about him a lot. He was in the conversations a lot. I think he would get him. But that's probably about it.
Okay. But again, that's 4 players that Stephen A. Smith could probably get. And then maybe, Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, those kind of guys.
Jack Sawyer, maybe.
No way. If you asked him who Jack Sawyer plays for, I don't think he would know. But the point I guess I'm making is I'm not sure if Shadur Sanders is really a great draft prospect as much as he is a TV prospect. We talk about this all the time about TV players and TV teams. If a basketball team were to acquire Dwight Howard right now, SportsCenter would stop everything they're doing to say, Oklahoma City just acquired Dwight Howard. I don't think Dwight Howard scored a bucket in 15 years. But everybody stop what you're doing. I remember when the Titans got Julio Jones, and it was unstoppable. And I said, those are TV players, just like the Cowboys are a TV team. And so I'm not convinced yet that Shadur Sanders is a top quarterback prospect as much as I am convinced he is a TV prospect, a la Tim Tebow, who was a TV prospect. Lamar Jackson was a TV prospect, and Lamar Jackson's a bad boy. So there is something to keep in mind there. But there's a wild card in all of this, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders. So I got a little depressed knowing the Raiders had the 6th overall pick. I got a little depressed when I saw that they made Pete Carroll the coach, even though I love Pete Carroll and I think Pete Carroll's a great coach. And I think that that's going to bring some much needed sanity to Mark Davis and the Raiders. But the one thing that I kind of wondered is who's really in charge there? Is it Pete? Is it John Spytek, the new general manager who they hired before Pete? Is it minority owner Tom Brady? Is it majority owner Mark Davis? I don't know. And Mark Davis made a comment when they hired Pete Carroll that if I was a Raider fan, and Fitz will be on with us later, he is a Raider fan, that would be very alarming. Now, the graphic nature of what he said, I think, is what led to the headline, but that's not what bothers me. He was talking about Tom Brady's involvement in their football operation and said, quote, bringing in Tom Brady was bringing in somebody on the football side that I had been lacking in here in the organization. Back in, I guess it was 2018 with John Gruden. He was somebody that I brought in, and he really expected to be that person on the football side that would bring stability to the organization. He had a 10-year contract and all that, and his head was chopped off. And we were put in a really bad position as an organization. So the graphic nature of he had his head chopped off, I guess for being a racist. He had his head chopped off is what stands out to people. What stands out to me is, again, we all know Mark Davis is stupid. We all know Mark Davis is a bad owner. We all know Mark Davis has a bad haircut. But what stood out to me is how obsessed Mark Davis is with a star. Gruden was on TV doing Monday Night Football. Every single job that came open, it was like, John Gruden, star. I'll never forget, there was a report that John Gruden met with the Colts. And I thought, oh no, what if John Gruden goes to the Colts? And Floyd Reese, who had competed with John Gruden, looked at me and said, oh, I don't care about that. I said, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, Gruden doesn't worry me. And he never did. In the way you know what Floyd meant. But Gruden was a star. Tom Brady. Tom Brady has never evaluated football in his life. He played quarterback. He's the greatest to ever do it. You all know I absolutely love everything about Tom Brady. But I saw Michael Jordan run a basketball team, and I saw Derrick Jeter run a baseball team. I would not hold my breath at the assumption that Tom Brady knows everything about running a football team. But again, Mark Davis, he's obsessed with stars. Pete Carroll should be running that organization. Pete knows how to run an organization. Pete has run an organization. Pete knows ball. But I don't know if Pete's really in charge around there or if it's the stars, which takes me back to Shadur. I wouldn't touch Shadur with the first overall pick. All these mock drafts say he'll go in the top 5, top 10 because of who he is, but Blake Bedingfield said second round grade. Any smartly run football organization does not take somebody with a second round grade with the 6th pick. But it's the Raiders. And he's a star. And their owner is addicted to stars. So I do wonder, is there any way that the Titans could work Mark Davis and his need for Shadur Sanders into trading a haul for the number 1 pick? You can still pick at 6. Now, you're probably not going to get Abdul Carter if you do that, so you're going to have to get a crap load in return. But you let them take the quarterback. You load up on all these picks. They're the Raiders, so they're going to be good picks. First rounder in next year's draft. And on you go. And again, with stars, bad owners can just get lured in. And when Mark Davis says, we had stability in our organization with Gruden, who was drafting Alex Leatherwood in the first round, Cleveland Ferrell with the 4th overall pick. When that was the case, I thought, my God, this guy's stupid. And again, that's how the Eagles get all these great players. They take advantage of the Colts over Carson Wentz. They take advantage over the Saints over future first-round picks. They take advantage of the Dolphins and end up with Devontae Smith and Jalen Carter because of it. They took advantage of you for A.J. Brown. You got to take advantage of the dumb teams. And if this guy's addicted to stars, Shadur is perfect for him. One texter says, Jared, Mike from PA says, Jared, I am in total agreement with you. I'm sick of Tennessee shows and national shows talking about what Brian Callahan wants or Brian Callahan needs. Anyone paying attention knows that he will have the smallest voice in every decision this year. One texter says, if we win 8 games, does Brian Callahan keep his job? Because I don't think the Titans will. I will say this. If they win 8 games, it's debatable. If Chad Brinker wants to fire him to hire Mike McCarthy, he's going to fire him and hire Mike McCarthy. Jason Fitz set to join us next here on the program. And, of course, your phone, 615-737-1025. It's Stillman Co. 1025-106 for the game. Stillman and Company. Next week, we will be live in New Orleans at Super Bowl 59 on Radio Row, and we expect to be joined on Radio Row by Jason Fitz of Yahoo Sports and Fox Sports Radio. Fitz, I got an email from someone I'm going to call your handler who said, would you have any interest in having Jason Fitz on the program? And I was like, I'm pretty sure we'll have Jason Fitz on the program next week. But as always, it's good to talk to you. Fitz, I'm going to put you on the hot seat to begin the very first question I'm going to ask you. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I am ready for this, and I'm ready in person next week, but I'm ready right now to be put on the hot seat. Let's go.
Okay, close your eyes. Tell me when your eyes are closed.
They're closed.
Okay. The date is April 25th, 2025. Jared Stillman, Trevor Maddich, Chris Sanders, and Derrick Mason are live at Twin Peaks. Which Twin Peaks? I don't know. But we'll be at one of the two Twin Peaks locations. What will they be wearing at Twin Peaks that day? Again, I don't know. But they'll be wearing something. And the draft is unfolding in front of all of our eyes, and all of a sudden the Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock, and the pick is in. And the Las Vegas Raiders select Shadur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. Fitz, as a diehard Raider fan, what would your reaction be?
So that you're putting me on the hot seat with this one, and I'll say this. Because I trust Pete Carroll, who found Russell Wilson in the draft and found Geno Smith, I'll look at it and say, okay, you see something I don't. Like, will I be like, look, last year, if you'd have told me that with the pick in the draft, the Raiders selected Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or Caleb Williams, I'd have been trying to do cartwheels. I'd have been throwing confetti. I was really clear all last year leading up that I loved all three of those guys. I thought all three of them were franchise quarterbacks. You know me, I've always been a preacher of patience in the quarterback conversation in the draft. But, man, I don't know. Like, Shadur sometimes looks good, and sometimes, man, like, he's got a little bit of the Caleb Williams runs around a long time to figure out where he's going with the football, which I don't think he's going to be able to do in the NFL. Like, I don't know. I didn't really see very many times where everything was stacked against him and he rose above. Like, it's just all of the things that we look for a quarterback. Like, I get he's Shadur and he's got the last name Sanders, but I honestly, I don't believe if his last name was Sanders, people would be nearly as hyped for him. I'm not faulting him for his last name being Sanders. Some people have. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that I think, like, if he was not last name Sanders, he's kind of a second or third round pick. So, look, Pete Carroll gets the pass from me, but if they pick him, I'll be shocked and I'll be, I guess, happy, but I won't be sitting here saying, oh my God, I think he'll still be the fourth best quarterback in this division for the next several years.
So the reason I ask that is because I am not yet convinced that Shadur Sanders is a legitimate high-end NFL draft prospect as much as I am convinced that I think he's a TV prospect, if that makes any sense. Kind of the way Tim Tebow was a TV prospect, kind of the way Lamar Jackson. Now, look, Lamar is a first ballot slam dunk Hall of Famer. So Lamar proved the haters wrong. Tebow did not. I think Shadur fits into that category. Fitz, I correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't think he has enough talent to be a franchise quarterback. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. I think, part of this too, and I like some of your comps there because I want to remind people that while Lamar was not refined coming out, and certainly I worked with plenty of people that said he should switch positions. I think there were still plenty of people that looked at it and saw it, whatever it is. And you thought, man, you just got to get somewhere where he can develop that. Like Josh Allen certainly had his issues coming out of college, but you also knew that he had it. You thought, man, if he goes to the right place, I would argue, I've seen all the rips of people today that are putting out, the questioning of Patrick Mahomes as a prospect. And you and I were hanging out together for that draft that year. And look, I think it's fair to say that, people were questioning a lot of what's his footwork really look like and all these things. There were questions around all of them, but there was no question that he was a very good player. It's just a question of, was he going to go to the right place he can be developed? I don't sit here in fear. Like if I had been a team like Texas this year or Notre Dame this year or, Ohio State this year, and I was taking on Shadur, there is not a time that I would have looked at Shadur and said, oh my God, we got to beat this guy. Like he did some really Herculean highlight plays, much like Caleb Williams has done, but just deliver the ball consistently on time in a way that that he's beating you with his brain. You can't outthink him. He sees what's coming before it gets there, all of these things. No. Like, I think he's an athlete that runs around and tries to figure out a way to make great plays. And I don't think you eat that way in the NFL. So I agree with you. If Shadur was going somewhere as a second-round pick that was going to slow play him and bring him along, and in 3 years he was going to start, if they were going to take the Jordan Love approach, I would feel much better about Shadur anywhere he goes than what's the reality of if he goes to the Titans or he goes to the Raiders or he goes to the Giants, where he's just going to be flung out there. And I think he's just going to murder the kid, unfortunately.
Jason Fitz is with us on the program. So let's say 3 years from now, because, again, that's really how long we give quarterbacks to develop no matter what. 3 years from now, who will be the better NFL player, Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, or Sam Darnold?
Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, that's not even close. Like, I don't think Cam or Shadur 3 years from now are starting in the league. This is the Zach Wilson draft all over again. Like, this is one of those drafts where people need quarterbacks and they're gonna rush up and they're gonna take one. But that doesn't mean that any of these guys are like, close your eyes to your need for a second. Just because you're desperately single and you really want to get married doesn't mean that you should marry somebody if the dates aren't good, right? And if we take the need away, and everybody says, well, you got to roll the dice on the quarterback. Okay, I mean, do you? Because I would argue when you're a bad team, what you really need to do is just take the best player available. Like, if the Titans believe that Abdul Carter, for example, or Travis Hunter are the best player available, I think when you are a terrible football team, you have a responsibility to simply not be terrible. It's one of the things that even Pete Carroll said in his introductory press conference when asked about the quarterback's position for the Raiders. He made it clear, we got to build up everything around him. And he said something I think we should focus on. He said, it's the toughest position to play in all the sports. So how do you make it easier for whoever's playing the toughest position? Like, I would argue that most of these teams picking in the top 6 don't have the things necessary to make it truly easier on playing the toughest position in sports. So not only are neither Cam nor Shadur, to me, franchise guys, but they're going to go somewhere where they're expected to be franchise guys, and they don't have the systems in place to help that happen. It feels like epic failure for both of them.
Fitz, why does ESPN treat Sam Darnold like he is a straight-up free agent? And I see these articles that are, the best landing spots for Darnold, this and that. Is there a chance he goes untagged by Minnesota? Because I'm convinced Minnesota's going to tag him, and I'm convinced if the price is right, they'll trade him. Why does ESPN keep treating Sam Darnold like a true unrestricted free agent?
Dude, I was on with Gojo today on his DraftKings show. And I said on that show that I believe that Sam Darnold would be franchised either because they're keeping him, which makes sense, or because they're trading him and they know they can get something back in return. But I don't think there's any chance he hits the open market. I had to mute all the conversations on Twitter because I'm getting destroyed by Vikings fans that tell me I've got my head up my rear end and have never seen a football game in my life. They don't want him. They'll tell you that, because of the way he melted down the last 2 games, he's trash and they don't want him around the team at all. They'd rather roll the dice with whoever and just go in with JJ. So Vikings fans seem to think that ESPN's right, that he's going to hit the open market. I'd be stunned. Even if they don't want him, it doesn't make any sense to let him hit the open market simply because you should try and do a sign and trade. Like, there are too many teams desperate. Like, let's be clear here. If Derrick Carr is cut by the New Orleans Saints for salary cap purposes, he's going to go somewhere else and start next year. And that's Derrick Carr, who frankly, right now is not giving us at least the little bit of hope that Sam Darnold gave us. I don't think there's a chance Sam Darnold hits the open market. I think you're right. I don't think Sam Darnold will hit the open market, but Vikings fans today are destroying me on social media all day for saying that. Obviously means I'm an idiot. I've never seen a football game in my life. They don't want him. So I don't think the Vikings are as short-sighted as their fan base is, but certainly there are plenty of people out there that think he's going to hit the open market. I don't see it, but some people do.
That is hilarious to me. I did a podcast with Matt Collar, who's covered the Vikings forever, wrote a book about it. And I did a podcast when the Titans played the Vikings, and it really wasn't like a Titan preview as much as it was like how to run a smart organization. And I kept saying they're going to tag Darnold. And there were some Viking fans, we don't have the cap space for it. And you know how I feel about cap space. Jason Fitz with us on the program. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Trevor yesterday, which is this. If the Titans walk out of the draft after the first 2 nights, and there's all this talk about trading back and more picks, and Chad Brinker saying he'd love to have 12 picks in the top 100 of the next 3 drafts, but if they walk out of night 2 of the draft with Abdul Carter and Sam Darnold and nothing else, so they trade the 35th pick for Darnold, they extend Darnold, and they've got Darnold and Abdul Carter, what would you say?
I'll go back to the question you just asked me about my reaction. If the Raiders walked out of the draft, of the first 2 nights of the draft, with Sam Darnold and Abdul Carter, I would lose my mind with joy. Like that, I'm not like, I literally, the hair on my arms is standing up thinking about that combination for my favorite team. Like, that's no exaggeration. If you tell me that you're getting Abdul Carter, who I think is surefire in this, if there's somebody in this draft I'm willing to bank on that I think is going to be very good, not a lot of questions, Abdul Carter to me is it. Like, he's a home run. You walk out of this with Abdul Carter and Sam Darnold, my God, like what is there? We have seen Sam Darnold turn around and win 14 games for a team. I know he was bad in the playoffs, but my God, you know what's worse than being bad in the playoffs? Not even sniffing them. Like, let's figure out how to get to that level before you start crossing them off the list. I mean, a 27, soon to be 28-year-old Sam Darnold on a 3 or 4 year deal to me makes a ton of sense for a team that's in need. Why not take the chance? And if it turns out he stinks, then you can figure out the position next year in the draft. Next year's draft is supposed to be better than this year's. We've known that for 3 years at the quarterback position. So, my God, like, yes, 100%. If you tell me it's Abdul and Sam Darnold for any of these teams, they're getting an A++++ for me when we look at the draft.
Okay, when it comes to Carter versus Hunter, where are you? And how many extra picks would you need to move off of both Carter and Hunter?
That's a really good question. So I think the reason that I prefer Carter at 1 over Hunter at 1 is that, frankly, the wins above replacement, like, there are wide receivers to be had in this draft. There are always wide receivers to be had in the draft. And yes, I think he's a very good one. And, you know, maybe you're looking at, I don't think teams are necessarily going to let him play both ways consistently. I've heard a few scouts say that, no, he's going to be a corner. Man, that's just, I don't know. I can't imagine him not being part, at least in part, of wide receiver. There are a couple of edge rushers that are really good in this draft, and the drop off after that is big. Like, if you want depth in this draft, there's way more depth at defensive tackle than there is at anybody that can actually get after the quarterback. And we all see it right now. Like, frankly, the way pass rushers are paid, you got to get pass rushers on a rookie deal. So I think your best chance of getting the dynamic pass rusher substantially goes down if you miss out on Abdul Carter. There's a big drop off to me. How many picks would I need? I'd need a couple at least to move out. Like, if I'm moving below 5, I'm going to need a haul. Like, this year's draft is really, the signature of it is that there's a lot of depth between, they say picks 10 and picks 80. There's going to be a lot of players that can get out there and make a difference, make a roster, but there are not a lot of stars that everybody's banking on right now in this draft. And so I just look at it from the Titans standpoint and say, man, if you're telling me that what I'm really going to get is good filler, then I got to have enough icing to make that worth it. I got to have enough icing to make it worth getting less dynamic. So I need a pretty good haul. You're talking like 3 picks. If I'm getting out of the top 10 at all, I need 3 picks that are valuable picks.
Jason Fitz, as always, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Fitz will be with us live in New Orleans next week, which we're very, very, very excited about. Fitz, great stuff as always. We'll talk soon.
Can't wait to see you in person, my friend. Have a great week.
Yep, Jason Fitz, as always, joining us on the program. He said he would piss his pants. I guess the words he used, lose my mind with joy, if the Raiders ended up walking out of the draft with Abdul Carter and Sam Darnold. Again, 35 to Minnesota for Darnold, 4-year extension, 4-year, 162, whatever for Darnold, and you're done at quarterback for the time being. That's what I would do. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, Stillman Co, 1025-1063 The Game. Trevor, if I told you right now the Titans could end the first 2 days of the draft, or the first 2 days of the draft with Abdul Carter as an edge rusher and Sam Darnold as their quarterback, but they will have not traded back, thus no picks for next year, or no extra picks for next year, and no extra picks in the second and third rounds of this year, would you say that's still a good thing, or do you think that would be a bad thing?
Well, I'd say that's still a good thing because more picks is only good if you get the right guys. And typically, after you're picking from about 6 or so down, you're dealing with good guys that'll be solid starters for a long time. Above that, you better have generational game breakers. You better be taking those kinds of guys. And so, is one generational game breaker worth a couple of good, solid starters? And I tend to think that the way the game is played nowadays, they'd be better off taking Carter than trading down. Now, if they did trade down, I'd be okay with it as long as they picked the right guys. But Carter, I think, adds a level of oomph to the team, the level of ability to beat the other guy one-on-one, regardless of what the scheme is, that I think will be a real delight to watch.
There you go. That was Trevor Maddich saying, hey, I'd like it. Fitz on the show. Carter, Darnold, they like it. Again, if I were to tell you all right now that you're going to walk out of round 2 and 3 of the draft and you're going to have Sam Darnold as your starting quarterback and Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter as your number 1 pick, I'd be happy. And I think they're on the right path. And my God, the crying and the moaning and the bitching would be unbelievable from you all. In fact, what I think is going to happen is I think if the Titans end up with Sam Darnold, there's going to be a lot of, we don't want Darnold, he sucks, that are going to say, he did win 14 games last year for the Vikings. He did throw for 4,300 yards. He was 4-2 in 2022 in Carolina. I think there's going to be a lot of that. Sam Darnold is not Poo-Poo Johnson. You can actually convince yourself that he's good because I think he might actually be. But LD from McMinnville says, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, LD says, you're going to need therapy when the Titans sign someone else besides Sam Darnold. So, again, my number 1 choice is Sam Darnold as the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. But there's also limits. I'm not willing to sign Sam Darnold to the same contract that Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence and Tua signed at $55 million a season. I'm not willing to do that. I'm also not willing to give Minnesota the number 1 pick or a first rounder in next year's draft or anything like that in exchange for Sam Darnold. Again, my offer is 35. That's it. Kansas City traded 2 second-round picks to get Alex Smith. But if the Titans end up going in a different direction, it could be for a myriad of reasons. Maybe Minnesota doesn't get rid of Darnold. Maybe they keep him. Again, ball's in their court. They'll franchise tag him. Maybe the Titans will fall in love with Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders or whatever. Again, that's a legitimate possibility. But I actually have a hard time believing that the Titans are going to talk themselves into overdrafting Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders. And I have a hard time believing that the Titans are going to take the bridge approach of Justin Fields or Mac Jones or Daniel Jones or one of these guys over, again, a legitimate first ballot Pro Bowler in Sam Darnold at 28 years old coming off of a 4,300-yard season. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to win 14 games with him as the quarterback, but I do think, again, it's better than what you've seen out of the other guys that would be out there and would be available. Taylor says, it scares the crap out of me that Darnold's ceiling would be Tannehill. Well, let me just say this, Taylor. If Sam Darnold reached his ceiling this year, which, again, he was 27. You can still get better after 27. But if he reached his ceiling this year, that is as a 4,000-yard passer, Ryan Tannehill never was, 14-game winner, Ryan Tannehill never was. So when you're saying the best he could ever be is Tannehill, What he was this past year is better than Tannehill ever was. You see what I'm saying? So I don't think his ceiling is Tannehill. One texter says, what about Traylon Burks? Trade him for a third or a fourth. Nobody's giving you a fourth for Traylon Burks. Should have done that last year when you signed Tyler Boyd. Maybe somebody would have given you a fourth then. Nobody's giving you anything now. He's got a torn ACL. He's got guaranteed money for one more year. Traylon Burks is going to be on the Titans. He's going to start the year on the PUP list. Will probably miss all of training camp and might show up in October or November. Maybe. But that's what's going to happen. One text says, the Darnold move is very Titans. We have a long history of doing this, whether it's Kerry Collins, Matt Hasselbeck, and Tannehill. We've had more success going that route than with Locker and Levis. Well, again, whatever happened with Matt Hasselbeck has nothing to do with Sam Darnold. Whatever happened with Jake Locker has nothing to do with Cam Ward. So we need to stop thinking like that. Jared versus Joe is next. Oh, I'm so excited. We'll do this. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Preds at home tonight. By the way, special time, 8 o'clock tonight against the Vancouver Canucks. But it is 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. Which means Joseph Robinette Rexroth Jr. is with us, as he always is for Jared versus Joe. Joseph.
Hello.
By the way, may I make a critique of the radio program this morning, the Robbie and Rexroth program?
Would love it. Would just embrace it.
You, Paul, and Robbie, as much as I love you, you guys make these inside jokes and then giggle about it amongst yourselves for a little bit and get sidetracked off the hard-hitting meat and potatoes discussion, Joe. We want the meat and potatoes.
I don't know that they were inside jokes as much as we got sidetracked by 80s TV shows, and I don't even know how, but, sometimes you just got to roll with it, man.
Okay, with that, it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline Fenton is back as our moderator. Joe getting his 1-week victory because Adam Vingan felt bad for him last week. Caroline, go.
Adam is such a softie. He doesn't have what it takes to be the full-time moderator around here. Okay, Joe. I'm just kidding. I love you, Adam. Joe, you go first. Should the Titans trade the 35th pick for Sam Darnold to be their starting quarterback?
Look, I don't think, first of all, I don't think it's going to happen. I know that's not the question. I don't hate it as much as you might think I hate it. But, I obviously don't love Sam Darnold as much as Jared does. I heard some Jared talking about Sam Darnold better than Jalen Hurts, which is idiotic. I mean, Jalen Hurts has had huge, big-time performances in Super Bowls, in games leading to Super Bowls. There's no comparison. Jared's going to box score scout that crap, and it's just a joke. However,
congratulations, Jalen. You beat a team that had a quarterback who couldn't throw. Way to go, Jalen.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, Jalen Hurts was the leader for MVP for most of that season. Mahomes ended up sneaking up on him and getting it. He's done things that Sam Darnold has not come close to doing. So I will say, however,
hold on, wait a minute. Time out. Is getting close to winning the MVP, does that count as he's done something Sam Darnold didn't do? He got close at winning an MVP.
I think throwing for 300-plus yards in a Super Bowl would qualify as not anything that Sam Darnold has come close to doing. Getting to a Super Bowl, going to a playoff game and not completely turtling and dribbling down his leg and sucking in the one playoff game he's played in, there's a few things for you. You want me to continue?
So by that logic, who's better? Who's a better quarterback? By that logic, who's a better quarterback, Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts? Because Lamar hasn't thrown for 300 in a Super Bowl.
Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback. He's also won 2 MVPs, champ. Okay.
I agree. Again, but don't give me the, well, he threw 300 in a Super Bowl and Darnold didn't. Okay, neither did Lamar Jackson. Neither did Josh Allen. Got it.
Let's keep it on the topic. Sam Darnold. And again, I will continue to start this sentence, and we'll see if you let me finish it. He had a great season. I give you credit for believing in him and kind of calling it. He was terrible the 2 biggest games of his career. He was awful. But he was very good this year. You can't dismiss that. I think there's definitely something to the Jets' vortex of hell, and there's something to, he got better in Carolina. I know in San Fran they actually loved him. So all of which is to say, I mean, I guess I would say no to the question.
But I don't completely hate it. It comes down to their evaluation of Sam Darnold. I mean, I think if the Titans could get Sam Darnold, obviously, if they were to let him go, if he were to go into free agency, I would say yes, absolutely, go sign the guy. I just don't. I don't know that he's going to be better in this league than a good, solid bridge quarterback. Could you do worse than that? Sure. But I also look at 35 and I say, man, you can get some incredible football players with that pick. So I will say no, but again, give some credit to Stilly for his Sam Darnold love.
Thank you. Here's my thing, which is, okay, if Darnold at 35 is not what you want to do, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to take Sanders or Ward at number 1? Do you want to sign Mac Jones or Daniel Jones? Like, what do you want to do?
No. Well, again, I mean, I don't know. And I don't have a great – I mean, but if your answer to something is no, it doesn't mean you have to know what the answer is, what your path is, right? I mean, look, they may decide that one of these quarterbacks is absolutely worth the first pick. I mean, they're doing their due diligence. I would shy away from that personally. But, I mean, it's for you to frame it like, well, if you're not trading 35 for Sam Darnold, what in the world are you going to do? I mean, just fold the franchise if you're not trading 35 for Sam Darnold, by golly. What else could you possibly do? There's no other path per Jared.
Well, I'm just wondering what the other paths are, or what your other paths are.
Well, what
other paths do you prefer?
Well, look, I don't think that Sam Darnold was really good this year. I don't think that he's in some totally different tier from a Derrick Carr. I'm not a big fan of the Aaron Rodgers thing. I think, Cousins has been an excellent quarterback. I'm really afraid of the Achilles and what happened to him late. I mean, I think we've talked through all these things. There's not a great obvious path. So, I would consider this trade of yours that you've concocted as something that's reasonable. It's not like worth, I'm sure, all the crap that you've been taking from some people, but there are other possibilities. I don't hate Justin Fields. Do I think Sam Darnold's better than Justin Fields? Absolutely. But you're also talking about trade. But you're talking about, to me, I still think of Sam Darnold as a bridge quarterback, a guy who, could probably give you something close to what Tannehill gave you, which is still pretty good.
Did you think Tannehill was a bridge quarterback? Because I think Tannehill was your franchise quarterback.
I think Tannehill was an excellent quarterback for a couple of years.
But he wasn't a bridge.
He was more than a bridge.
Jacoby Brissett, it was a bridge quarterback.
Right. But see, so that's the thing, Jared. So Tannehill's a great example to counter what you're saying to me, which is, the Titans like, yeah, I'll throw you a fourth. Sure. Let's take Ryan Tannehill, whatever, and see what he can do. And he turns into what he did, right? I mean, look, man, you can claim to know anything. I laughed when Denver drafted Bo Nix, and look at him. So I'm gonna be honest that I'm ignorant about how these things are going to work out. But again, Tannehill was just a throwaway. Yeah, bring him in, and he all of a sudden has the best combination of yards per attempt and completion percentage as Joe Montana in 1989 in that 2019 season, and he is a Pro Bowler by performance. 33 touchdowns, 5 picks in 2020. No one saw that coming. So.
He was not a Pro Bowler,
he was less. Well, right. He was a Pro Bowler by performance, is what I just said. So coming in, he was less than a bridge quarterback. He was just, okay, he's a guy who, started this league and, it could be a nice backup, maybe push Marcus a little bit. And then he turns into what he did. So you just don't know. And if you tell me that Darnold regresses and the turning into a pumpkin continues after these last 2 games, I would believe that too.
So I guess the thing I would say is, the reason why I would do this is because, number one, Sam Darnold's 28 years old, or is going to be 28 years old. He's 27 now. So there's still room for improvement, but he's really entering his quarterback prime, which Kirk Cousins is not. Aaron Rodgers is not. Those are 2 old pawpaws that are coming off of torn Achilles. Everybody keeps talking about Derrick Carr. Derrick Carr is injured, number one. And number 2, I don't think Derrick Carr is shaking free in New Orleans because who's their quarterback going to be? So my thing is, would you feel better with Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter and Sam Darnold, or Shadur Sanders, Cam Ward, and no Travis Hunter and no Abdul Carter? And I just don't think Ward or Sanders are that good. I think Darnold 4 years from now will be better than both Sanders and Ward. Again, Joe's right. I don't know this for a fact, but that is what I feel. So I look at the one guy that is a legitimate starting quarterback. He threw for 4,300 yards this year. The Titans have never had a 4,000-yard passer. He won 14 games. He should be entering his prime. He's had all the mistakes and all the adversity and everything else in his past. I think he's the most viable option, and you still get your crack at Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, who I think are, I'm not going to just sit here and say game-changing talents, but very high-end talents to add to the team while checking the quarterback box and not having to hope Cam Ward develops. So,
and then you sit there with a team that's in a terrible roster situation without a second and a third. That's tough.
Yeah, well, it's not my fault that they traded a third rounder for L'Jarius Sneed's knees, so don't blame me for that. But at least I have a quarterback. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand that, well, we need the picks, but at the same time, it's like, right. But you know what you also need? A quarterback. So I am solving that. Even though I agree with you, they need more picks.
In your mind.
They need a quarterback. Well, I mean, if you trade for Darnold, Darnold's the quarterback. That doesn't mean that Darnold will be a good quarterback, but Darnold is the quarterback. There's no
solving it though. That suggests it's a successful move.
Well, I mean, I'm giving him a 4-year contract. It's really a 3-year contract. Like, I'm committed once I make this trade. Now, again, that doesn't mean that he'll be a superstar, but that means that the same way Arizona looks at Kyler Murray and says, hey, this is who we're rolling with, that's what I'm doing with Sam Darnold. Caroline, what's next?
I feel like at this point you should just trademark the phrase "L'Jarius Sneed's knees." Because
hey, I was right about that one too.
Not wrong. Okay, Jared, you go first. Is Shadur Sanders a legitimate quarterback prospect with the potential to be a franchise quarterback, or is the hype that he's getting due to the fact that he's made millions of dollars with NIL and his dad is Deion Sanders?
I do not think Shadur Sanders has the talent to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think he's too small. I think his arm is too weak. I think he benefits from two things that, again, one, everybody's aware of. His dad's famous. And because of that, Colorado was a big deal. And because Colorado was a big deal, Shadur was their quarterback. He was a big deal. And everybody was making a big deal about it. I laugh at all the talk that we had about Deion Sanders coaching in the NFL as if Colorado won anything. Well, look at how they turned Colorado around, Jared. Yeah, and Kenny Dillingham did the exact same and better at Arizona State. And nobody's talking about Kenny Dillingham to the Dallas Cowboys, which, again, is the Deion effect, which I think has happened with Shadur. I think Shadur is too small at 6'2". I think he's too slight. And quite frankly, I don't think he has the arm talent to be a high-end NFL passer. Now, can he be an NFL quarterback? Yeah, I think he probably could be. But could he be a legitimate ace, which if you're taking somebody with the number one pick, that's what you need them to be? No. I think Shadur Sanders is being propped up by the fact that his dad is famous. Thus, he becomes a TV prospect. And the other thing nobody seems to talk about, the Big 12 sucks now because Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC. All of Colorado's good opponents have gone to the Big 10 from the Pac-12, and they didn't have to play Arizona State this year. They didn't play BYU until the bowl game, and they got crushed. And so against good competition, Shadur in Colorado, even with the best player in the sport on their team, they weren't very good, or they didn't play them. So, yeah, I think Shadur is benefiting from the bad quarterback class, his dad's fame, and Colorado's lack of challenges on their schedule.
Well, I think his dad's fame, it works against him, if anything. I mean, his dad's fame has become a red flag that everybody talks about that I don't think too much of. I mean, let me ask you this. If this exact same quarterback prospect were, John Simmons, everything else the same level of high school career, same production in college, same skill set, what would he be right now in the NFL draft? Where would he be on the big board?
Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, he'd be exactly where he is. I mean, and so is he a legitimate prospect? Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
is he really a better, better
you think,
prospect?
Jared, you think that these draft guys are sitting there who sit there and all they do in their whole life is grind film all day? And by the way, a lot of them have him like in the 40s or whatever, which is fine. I mean,
that's my point. Nobody
sure.
ever put Joe Burrow in the 40s, Joe.
No. I'm not saying he's that level of prospect. If Carolina's asking, is he a generational clear top of the draft prospect? Hell no. But again, you're trying to say that he's getting artificially bumped for being Deion's kid. I think these guys are putting him exactly where they think he is by watching the film. You think these guys are sitting there watching this film and like, yeah, but boy, I really like prime time. I really love those Atlanta Falcons of the early 90s. No, they're just looking at the film. He's a legitimate quarterback prospect. I like him better than Cam Ward because I think he's safer. But I don't love either of them, and I would resist drafting either of these guys at the top of the first round. I could see Shadur falling. I could see him being, the quarterback this year who sits there and the camera pans to him like Levis a couple years ago, like Aaron Rodgers, like a lot of other guys that's happened to in the last 20 years. I think I'll be surprised if he doesn't go in the first round. Is he a legitimate prospect? Yes, he's a legitimate NFL prospect. I just mentioned Bo Nix. He's more talented than Bo Nix coming out of college.
That's actually according to the NFL. So NFL.com gives their rankings on these prospects on their grading scale. They actually have Bo Nix ahead. They had Bo Nix last year as a prospect ahead of Shadur Sanders.
Where'd they have him?
I believe they had Bo Nix at 6.39, and they have Shadur Sanders at 6.30.
Okay.
They actually have Malik Willis with a higher grade than Shadur Sanders.
Okay. In my opinion, Bo Nix, and again, I was wrong. So that's all these discussions. Let's keep going back to that. I mean, he's going to be in the NFL. I could see him being a starter someday. I think there's a safeness to him because he is accurate. He gets the ball out fast.
He doesn't get the ball out fast. He took the most sacks in college football.
Well, when he's not sacked, he again, watch him. The release is quick. Yes, he took a ton of sacks. They were atrocious up front.
But some of those were his fault.
None of those are on him. Yeah, sure. I'm sure some of them were his fault, Jared. The offensive line was objectively awful. So, I mean, again, to Caroline's question here, I mean, if you're asking if he's a legitimate, top of the draft, one of those top guys, like you bring in Burrow, hell no. He's not one of those guys, but he's an NFL prospect. He's not some kid, some schlub. I mean, Kurt Warner's kid would like to play in the NFL too, and no one gives a crap. I mean, he's not some schlub who doesn't have the talent to play in the NFL, but his dad's name is Deion. He is an NFL prospect.
Well, Caroline, what was your question? What was your question again? I'm going to Joe you here, Joe.
Is Uno reverse card. Is Shadur Sanders a legitimate quarterback prospect and has the potential to be a franchise quarterback, or is the hype due to the fact that he's Deion Sanders' son?
Yeah, I don't think he goes in the first round if his name's not Sanders, and I think he's going in the first round. And I heard Rick Spielman today say he thinks they're both going in the top 10. And he does not think that they're that good, but he thinks they're both going in the top 10. I think Shadur goes in the first round, and I do not think Shadur is a first-round talent.
Okay. I don't think the question makes it like it has to be one or the other. There's a lot of room in between, but that's fine. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback.
I think instead of being discussed with Cam Ward at the top of the draft, he's being discussed with Jackson Dart if he's not Deion Sanders' kid. I mean, Stephen A. Smith's on TV right now screaming about the Titans have to take Shadur Sanders, and I don't think Stephen A. Smith could name 7 people in this draft.
Well, that's true, and he's Deion's buddy. Now, I want to ask you, as dumb as some of these NFL people are, do you think they're really like, gosh, did you hear what Stephen A. said, though? I mean, he said he's legit. He said he's awesome. Let's listen to more to what Stephen A. says and then make some decisions based on that.
The New York Jets make decisions based off of the Madden football video game, Joe.
That is a fair point.
More Jared versus Joe to continue. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
discussions.
What's the deal with this quad?
Bigger arguments.
I was right. I had my finger on the pulse of this team.
It's so dumb. It's time.
Oh, it was the cap. Cap.
For Jared versus Joe.
For you, this is actually kind of well reasoned.
Brought to you by First Horizon Bank. Big bank muscle. Small bank hustle. And by Pella Windows and Doors.
We make the rules around here now.
Now on Stillman Company. Let's get it on!
Jared versus Joe. Caroline, the floor is yours.
All right, so we were just talking about Shadur Sanders as a quarterback prospect. So while we're on the conversation of the quarterback position, if Mike Borgonzi loves one of these quarterbacks, let's say it's a free agent quarterback or one of these quarterbacks in the draft, but Brian Callahan doesn't love one of those quarterbacks, what do the Titans do? Joe, you go first.
They collaborate, of course. They find a middle ground and pick a completely different quarterback.
The C word.
No. Yes. I'll say this. They don't just go, Borgonzi's way or the highway. I mean, I think that's a terrible way to run a team. I know Jared's big on, their bro hug wasn't warm and I don't know, whatever Jared's segments were. Their bro hug was weird. I looked at Jill Jelnick and now Brian Callahan has no say in the Titans prospects. Something like that. Right? Did I get that about right, Jared? Something like that, right? I just don't subscribe to the idea that it's the 1980s and GMs are just you sit there and coach the team and I'll give you who you're going to coach. That's a ridiculous notion. So if Borgonzi loves a quarterback, and again, they're going through this entire process together. I do take at face value a lot of what they said at the presser. We out here like to dream up these dramatic scenarios with people pounding their fists on the table and it's go time and it's like the movie Draft Day, which is a pretty bad movie with Kevin Costner. And there are moments like that, like Bedingfield, spending a day working his butt off to try to get them to consider Derrick Henry, and he finally gets his way. But they're going through the process of evaluating these processes together. It's hard for me to believe that it's going to be Borgonzi nah, man, this guy's amazing. And Callahan's no, this guy stinks. No way. They're going to, one of them's going to talk the other into it. Ultimately, it's on Borgonzi. So if he, if he feels that strongly, he has the power, I think, to do it, unless this is one of those moments when Brinker steps in and breaks a tie, right? Because he actually has final say. But the question you're asking, if you're looking for should Borgonzi just put his foot down or no, I say absolutely not. If your coach doesn't feel good about the quarterback, then you're just wasting a year before you fire him and you bring in your new coach. If that's how you feel about it, all right, then you can do the Bears thing and you can Eberflus him and go get your guy. But I would think that if you're Borgonzi, you would want to work with your coach and you would want your coach to be happy with the quarterback you pick because he's coaching him.
You'd want to work with I agree. I think you'd want to work with your coach, but not if he wants to do the exact opposite of what you believe in. Now, all of a sudden, that's where the rubber kind of meets the road. So I disagree with Joe's theory that they're not going to have these level of disagreements. And
it's every day in your mind. It's all day long screaming at each other. Yeah, baby.
Well, but it's so laughable to me when it's what do you guys do if you disagree on a draft prospect? And then they say, well, we work out a lot of our decisions ahead of the draft. No crap. But while you're working out the decisions, we always hear the stories, do we not, about Johnny was banging the table for this guy. He's not banging the table when the clock is going and they're on the clock. You're banging the table on March 6th when you're really, truly making these decisions. That's when you bang the table.
But that's not true. The Bedingfield banged the table on the day of the thing. So it does.
That's a second round draft choice. We're talking about taking a quarterback.
Okay. That's not very important. Yeah. Okay.
But again, you don't know who's going to be there in the second round. You can't plan for who's going to be available in the second round. You can have an idea, but you don't know how your board's going to shake. Whereas the Titans are going to be making the decisions about, okay, if the Giants call and they want to offer, they want to trade up from 3, here's what we'll accept. Here's what we won't accept. And if we don't accept, here's who we'll take. Like, those get worked out, and they have to get worked out again in March, because this is when you're going to sign a quarterback or trade for a quarterback or whatever at the start of the new league year. But there will be disagreements. And here's my theory to what Caroline says. My advice to Mike Borgonzi would be this: do what you think. This is your shot. You didn't hire Brian Callahan. You're not responsible for Brian Callahan, and they are not interested in Brian Callahan's opinion. Mike Borgonzi has hired 2 other guys, or I really think Brinker's hired 3 guys to work with him in the personnel staff. They're going to care more about those opinions than they care about Brian Callahan's opinions. Now, here's why I don't think that scenario will happen. That there will be a quarterback that Borgonzi wants that Callahan just hates. Because I think Brian Callahan knows the score. And Brian Callahan is smart enough to know that he is going to go along to get along. That he is not, by any stretch of the imagination, going to try to upset the apple cart, because I think he knows where he stands, which is when they ask him what he thinks, he'll say. But I don't think Brian Callahan's going in there saying, I don't really want to coach, Jimmy. I don't think he's doing that. And then, again, I think the other thing that Joe brought up is, is this one of the scenarios where Brinker breaks a tie? Well, who do you guys think Brinker's breaking a tie in favor for?
Borgonzi.
Of course. So, I remember I asked Mark Dominic on the day of the draft. I said, if you're Rand Carthon and you want to take Brock Bowers, because remember, Dominic had just a freaking Woody for Bowers. And rightfully so, because Bowers is pretty freaking good. But I mean, just saying.
$1 in the jar. Children are listening.
And I said to Dominic, I asked him on the day of the draft, he was on the program, and I said, if you were the general manager and you wanted Bowers, but Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan are just beating the door down saying, but Mark, we can make Joe Alt a superstar. We can make J.C. Latham a superstar. I said, what do you do? And he said, 30-year-old me said, okay, we'll get the guy the coach wants. He said, 50-year-old me says, nope, we're taking the tight end and we'll figure the rest out later. That's my advice to Mike Borgonzi. If you believe in one of these guys or you don't believe in these guys, you take them or you don't. I've told the story about Bryant Mix, who was the Titans' second rounder in 96. All the coaches, all the scouts loved Bryant Mix. Floyd did not see it, did not understand what everybody else saw, but figured if everybody else believed in Bryant Mix, there must be something there. Took him. He had 1 career sack. And that was a lesson of, if I don't like the guy, I'm not taking him. So with Borgonzi, my thing is, if there's a disagreement between the two, Callahan knows the score. He knows he's not going to win that argument, so he's not going to push it too hard. But do not, if you think Cam Ward's a franchise quarterback, do not dissuade your opinion because Brian Callahan, an 18% coach, says, no, I don't think that. Go with your gut, Mike Borgonzi.
That's fine. I mean, ultimately, I agree. Like, you're not going to, if you feel strongly about something, you're not going to end up, changing your opinion or flipping because the coach said so. But I think you also need to work with the coach and not just go with what you believe. I mean, you have to have these conversations daily with your coach, and hopefully the bro hugs are getting a little warmer during the process because, he's got to be able to see it too. He's the one who's going to be working with this guy every day.
Sure. But what if it's like, again, I always use the example of somebody who's pro-life versus somebody who's pro-choice. Somebody who's pro-life is not going to change their opinion. And that is the same with somebody who's pro-choice. Like, they're just not going to change their opinion. So if Brian Callahan is convinced that Cam Ward is not that dude, and Mike Borgonzi is convinced that Cam Ward is that dude, my advice to Mike Borgonzi is take Cam Ward.
Okay.
And to that point, though, about Brian Callahan not wanting to upset the apple cart, I do understand that. But also, Brian Callahan is looking around and understands he's probably next on the chopping block of whoever gets fired. So if Brian Callahan does not believe in a guy that Mike Borgonzi does believe in, Brian Callahan might feel like that's his job. And are you just going to accept that and take that and be okay with getting fired over a guy that you don't even believe in?
Yeah, I can't do that.
You won't be happy about it, but you're probably going to stick it out. And another thing is, look, I believe Brian Callahan. I really do, that he came in here when he was gushing about Levis all off season. I mean, I don't think he was just like, he went way beyond just your coach speak on that. And guess what? He was dead wrong. So if you're him, you also need to look in the mirror and say, yeah, I may not know. And if these guys love this guy, then I need to be able to work with him.
Yeah. Speaking of Woodies, that was a Woody right there. Caroline, what's next?
Easy there.
All right. Jared, you go first. Vanderbilt basketball beat back-to-back top 10 teams at home, Tennessee and Kentucky. Vanderbilt basketball is now a top 25 team in the country. Do you believe that Joe Rexrode owes all of us an apology about his take on Jerry Stackhouse?
Oh, my God.
So let me just say this. I don't know if you guys listen to the...
This is supposed to be like an argument. So this is a two people attack one. All right, let's go.
So I don't know if you guys listened to
Totally
the show
fair.
on Friday, but I was at the brand new Huber Center, the new practice facility for Vandy basketball. It was very nice. And I said on the program that I owed Vandy an apology. And I'm going to apologize to both of you. Joe, I'm apologize to you. Caroline, I'm going to apologize to you. Because I think in the very early years of Jared versus Joe, we had a discussion about the Vandy United Fund and the new facilities they were going to build. And,
it's not
and
gonna
I
happen,
said,
blah, blah, blah.
I will not believe that Vanderbilt is going to do this until I see shovels in the ground. And now that I've been at the dedication of the brand new state-of-the-art practice facility, and I see, again, you can't not see the shovels in the ground with the football stadium. Vanderbilt is putting their money where their mouth is. So I owe both of you an apology. I lost to Jared versus Joe over that.
Thank you.
And I owe an apology because at Caroline, I called you gullible for believing that Vanderbilt was going to build stuff. And Joe, I called you a homer. So I expect Joe Rexrode to offer up the same level of humility that I just offered up in my apology, to apologize to the people for all the times you said Jerry Stackhouse was a good coach, when Mark Byington is 8,000 times the coach that Jerry Stackhouse is, and Vandy basketball is back. Joe, you owe the people an apology. You owe the pro-Jerry media, you owe the people an apology.
But how could anybody take anything you say seriously on this? I wrote a piece about Jerry Stackhouse.
Because I just apologized.
Which ended my relationship with Jerry Stackhouse. Ended it. And have Jeff Goodman trashing him. You sat there and called it a puff piece because I tried to...
It ended your relationship with Jerry Stackhouse because Jerry Stackhouse is stupid, not because it wasn't like a very positive piece for Jerry Stackhouse.
It was not a... It was.
And you're not the only one who Jerry Stackhouse has ended a relationship with in the media.
True.
Well, that's true. Look, so because I'm sitting here right now. I think Jerry Stackhouse can coach basketball. Like, okay, I'm sorry. I think he can coach basketball. I think he can't handle. I mean, and if you seriously
can he coach it well?
Anyone who's ask anybody who's in the game of basketball. He was the SEC Coach of the Year. It's not like there was no sign of a guy who can coach basketball. But what he can't do, he can't deal with the media crap, obviously. He could not get his teams to play early in seasons well. The stuff he did was probably more conducive to the NBA because you have a runway and you can be fine if you have 10 games where you are totally following everything up. But in this job, you lose to crappy teams and then you're screwed. I mean, they had teams that were absolutely good enough to make runs in the NCAA tournament. I mean, 2 years ago, that team could have made an absolute run, and you said it yourself on your show multiple times. So I'll apologize, but you need to tell me the phrasing. Because to say that he is like a good basketball coach, I still think that. Like, I'm not going to lie right now.
So give
I
us your
apologize?
apology. You're going to say you're apologizing. So give us instead of asking Caroline to define what kind of apology you have to give, just apologize.
Since you guys have such a Woody over me giving an apology, okay.
Enough of the Woody talk. All right.
I apologize if I gave Vanderbilt fans too much hope that Stackhouse would eventually figure it out. I will apologize. If I did that, then I apologize. How's that?
You should apologize for shaming people that knew Jerry Stackhouse couldn't coach.
Jared, anyone in basketball who coached against him, who watches the film of him coaching, will tell you, oh, it's a damn good basketball coach. But again, that's not the whole part. That's not everything in this job. He didn't recruit well enough, and he didn't deal with the exterior crap. No, I agree. I mean, but again, so are we isolating it to coaching the game? Or are we saying running a program? He obviously can't run a successful program. He got fired. He couldn't get it done. There were things that he could not figure out early season, didn't recruit well enough, didn't deal with the external crap. He was way too sensitive and combative and all that crap. Mark Byington's, it's been amazing. So again, Vanderbilt fans, if I gave you false hope that he would figure it out, even though I had my doubts, I apologize.
Caroline, who wins this week?
How did that feel, Joe? Do you feel better?
It's fine, but I can't. I'm not going to lie and say I think that he's like a crap. Well, I'm not going to lie and say I think he's a crappy basketball coach. I think he's a good X's and O's basketball coach.
He can't recruit. He can't deal with the media. He's too sensitive, but he's a great coach.
I just explained it.
I know. We heard it. I just summed it up.
Okay, let Caroline talk now.
I think you both made very good points. First question about Sam Darnold. Joe, you say that you have to come up with, another option. You don't have to come up with another option. I don't think that's true. Like, if you say that you don't want some sort of free agent quarterback like a Justin Fields and a Mac Jones, like, I think that you can come up with an alternative. Like, if you say, I don't want Sam Darnold, I want the Titans to take Cam Ward with the first overall pick, I wouldn't agree with you, but that's at least an alternative option. I don't think that you can just say, no Sam Darnold, no Cam Ward, no Shador Sanders.
I didn't say no Sam Darnold. We're talking
anyone.
about trading the 35.
Yeah. So if you're anti-trading the 35th overall pick.
Justin Fields. I said draft. There's two things I gave as a possibility. Okay.
And then I think, Joe, you made a good point about Shador Sanders being somewhere in the middle. I don't think that it's one end of the spectrum. I do not think that Shador Sanders is going to be a franchise quarterback. I also do not think that Shador Sanders is getting as much buzz and hype as he's getting simply because Deion Sanders is his dad. Like, I do think that the truth is somewhere in the middle. But ultimately, Jared wins this week because I think his apology was more genuine. And frankly, I forgot about the Vandy United Fund and how Jared was just giving it to me, calling me gullible, saying that millions and millions of dollars wouldn't make a difference.
I thought you were getting hoodwinked.
The apologies.
Yeah, I really thought you were getting sucked into the lies. I really did. And when I was at that Huber facility the other day, I mean, that baby is freaking gorgeous. And I was like, wow, it's a different Vanderbilt. I'm going to tell you that right now. Gentry wrote that in the Tennessee, and Joe would write that if he still wrote about local things. But, I mean, it is a different Vandy. Guys, thank you so much. Caroline, we will see you in New Orleans next week.
Appreciate you guys. See you soon.
More Stillman and Company to continue. 102.5 The Game. Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. I want to congratulate myself on winning Jared versus Joe, which I'm very excited about. But I was a little surprised yesterday. We had Barry Trotz on the program, as we always do. And the part that got picked up was Trotz came on the show, and I asked him about, hey, if you guys actually start winning some games here and get back, what's going to – he said, hey, I told the veteran guys, if we climb out of the hole we're in, I'll go make some minor additions to the team. If not, probably going to be trading guys away. I didn't think that was that big of a deal. And yet the fans were, can you believe Barry Trotz is talking about being a seller? Excuse me, being a buyer. I'm like, guys, there was a very big if in that. Of everything that came out of the Trotz interview, that was the least interesting part, in my opinion, was if this happens, then will XYZ. What I find to be kind of more, and I don't want to use the word alarming, but what I find to be kind of more of the issue is that I'm worried that the goalie, they're just in love with this goalie, think he can do no wrong. They've given him this unbelievable contract, and I'm not sure he's that much better than a league average goalie. And I'm not sure that he's ever going to be worth the contract they gave him. And there is absolutely nothing that they can do if he's not. If he's not an elite goalie, there's nothing at this point they can do about it. That's my big issue. Not the, hey, if this team pulls its head out of its tush and goes on a nice little run, then he'll make some additions. To me, that's obvious. And with that, it's time for Predators Game Day. Predators Game Day tonight. Special time at Bridgestone Arena. Predators and the Canucks, 8 o'clock. Not your traditional 7 o'clock. 8 o'clock right here on 102.5, 106.3. The Game. The Vancouver Canucks are 22-17-10. That's good for 54 points. The Predators 18-23-7. That's good for 43 points, which is just not good enough. The Predators have actually been okay at Bridgestone Arena as they are 12-8-3 on the season. The Predators lost 5-2 on Saturday night at Anaheim, which ended a 5-game winning streak, and I thought was a real punch to the gut because Anaheim stinks, and maybe if they were going to, again, pull their heads out of their tushies, it was going to be on this one. Predators Game Day presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. That's my realtor. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson. And in the most recent game, UC Saros against the Predators and the Canucks stopped all 27 shots he faced to earn his fourth shutout of the season. They're going to need more of that. Saros 7-2-1 in his career in the regular season against Vancouver. Again, Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. That's it for us. We are out of here. The pregame will come on at 7 o'clock. Again, special time with an 8 o'clock puck drop tonight because of Canadian TV. That's it for us. Stillman & Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow.